Hey, how's it going, you guys? Welcome back to some more Hello Lady. I do apologize for the delay in this video. It's been like over a week now, and I've had a lot going on. I wasn't feeling too good. I ended up moving apartments, and I'm just finally getting around to doing this, so I'm excited to get back into the game. We are in Eru Takazaki's route, and we are pursuing Saku because she's up to something weird, kind of unlike her to be doing something that potentially is going against the school rules and policies. But let's go ahead and find out what that is. It was almost time for the end of the practical exam. If the target had been suppressed, we would have been informed, but since that hadn't happened, she obviously hadn't been found.
それにしても拍子抜けだな。何か仕掛けてくる者がいるかもしれないと思っていたのだが。
成田の命を狙ってるスナイパーとかですか？バチ、縁が女。そういうのに自分巻き込まないでください。
今朝試験開始の時売られたものでね。
Eru folded her arms and sunk deep into thought. Then an exclamation mark popped up over her head as something came to mind.
成田をよく思っていない連中ですか？自分もその手のやつを何人か知ってます。新入りは得てして疎まれるものですよね。
Oh, okay, so it's not just us that gets these.
成田はその連中が何かしてくるとか。
おかしいかね。
Eru shrugged, a mix of a shock and amusement on her face.
はっはっは。それは無理ですよ。人間、てめえより弱いやつにはどれだけでも横暴になれますが、強い相手にはおとなしいものです。減らず口を叩くのがせいぜい。
You know, Eru, I think that's probably pretty spot on. I'm gonna have to agree with you there.
成田はエトワールです。変態でも、リトルハンターでも。
No, we are not.
後者は濡れ衣だ。その冤罪は看過できない。
It is lies and slander.
変態はいいんですか？ちなみに昨夜、本気で超アヘアヘ言ってたのを自分の目が見届けています。
I hate how she's so self-aware of it too. She's so self-aware that she's like just a little girl. Or just a small girl, I should say. What a pitfall. Was that the fabled honey trap?
何にしても定められた序列は定まっているだけで力を持ちます。自分の力を顧みずに挑みかかるのは本物のバカか勇者かどちらかだけでしょう。
Eru turned back to the previous subject, and I honestly understood her point.
では彼らはバカでも勇者でもないと。
まあ、結果から言えばそういうことじゃないですか。
She spun in place as she acted like that didn't matter to her at all. It was a pointless action, but she seemed to enjoy it.
ノーブルの卵とか言われてますが、ほとんどはたまたまハローを手に入れたごく普通の連中です。ぶっ飛んでスライダー化しなかった分だけ適性はあったんでしょうけど。
You know, Eru, for as dumb as you can be sometimes and some of the weird stuff you say, like, I actually very much agree with this. I feel like a lot of people in this situation probably were just very normal people and just so happened to get these powers. And I'm hoping we're going to learn more about how they gain those powers later, because I don't feel like it's by accident.
英雄でも勇者でも怪物でもありません。
面白いものの見方だ。しかしその見解はスクールの趣旨に反するのではないのかね。
That is an interesting point. What do you have to say about that, Eru?
そうですね。では、内緒ということで。
Don't worry, we'll keep your secret, okay? Because we feel exactly the same way, because we're just totally against the values of the school.
承知した。
Your secret is safe with us. She spun again. Her movements didn't look sprightly enough to be a dance. Instead, it reminded me of a machine, a spinning gyro. It seemed metallic in nature, which struck a chord within me. As awkward as it appeared, she was doing her best to spin. Though dull and uninteresting, I sensed a strong will behind that action.
君は本当に不思議な乙女だね。
女はいつでも謎だらけなのです。前も似たようなことを言ったかもしれないですが。
And it's straight facts.
そろそろ潮時だ。他の連中と合流してスクールに戻るとしよう。
Eru stopped spinning and walked up to me. Like before, she lagged behind by a half step, and I felt the same illusion of a long-lost warmth yet again. I'm still trying to figure out what that connection is between Eru and his sister. Like, I'm dying to know. We entered the same bands as before and returned to the academy, and uneventfully split up. The practical field examination didn't lead to the capture of the target, but apparently it wasn't a complete failure. Also, there was plans for several other practical exams during the week, which threw a spanner in the works of my plans. We didn't find out what Saku was up to, though. I'm kind of disappointed about that, but I'm sure we're going to soon. Eru and I returned to the dorm, but Saku didn't. Oh, okay. Saku should have arrived before either of us, so I assumed that she was either handling the aftermath like the insignia she was, or acting on her own again.
Saku もいない。玉緒もいない。大義のボンボンもまだ帰ってこない。二人だとここも随分と静かですね。
Certainly unusual, I'll say that.
せっかく学園外に出たのだから、外で食事を済ませてくればよかったな。
Yeah, I feel like that's something that would be pretty likely if you just let a bunch of, I don't even know if we're high schoolers. I think we're supposed to be like, I don't know, maybe high schoolers, but that's what I would have done. I would have went and tried some of the restaurants around town. All that walking had made me hungry. I had so many things to think about, but we humans had no choice but to worry about sustenance first and foremost. Hishia had informed me that she found the time to walk around Okushima's famous eatery, so it was quite a waste not to use her information. Of course, I had no intention of leaving the academy again, and so I resolved to give up and eat on campus.
食堂にでも行くかね、エル。
飯ならこのエルが作りましょう。
おお、あまり君が作っているところを見たことがないが。
Back when everyone was around, the considerate Soriko handled most of the cooking, though Saku and Mitori were close behind her. Tamao and Eru, on the other hand, focused more on eating. I would be in that latter category. I like to eat. I mean, I cook a few things, but like, let's be honest, like everyone loves eating more, right?
舐められたものです。
She said that, spun around, placed her right hand on her face, and ran her left hand along her cheek. How odd. Sounds like a character pose from an anime. After standing like that for a moment, she opened her eye to check my reaction before continuing her speech. She is such a little kid sometimes. It's so hilarious to me.
余裕です。エルは天川ノーブルスクールのレジェンドシェフと今自分で名付けるほどの腕前ですよ。
I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty sure you just made that up, but I'll allow it.
自分で名付けたのかね。危険な通り名だな。
I'm glad Narita agrees with me. I didn't know how good she was, but she seemed rather confident. I simply remembered that I'd seen her create midnight snacks for Saku. She had also already showed me her coffee-making ability. Perhaps that was a good sign.
ならば頼むとしよう。そうだな。できれば地元らしい料理がいい。
リクエスト付きの厚かましさが成りたらしいですね。わかりました。少々材料を部屋に取りに戻ります。
Dang, I'm excited to see what she's gonna make. Eru returned to her room. What kind of food did Okushima have, anyway? It didn't really matter. I decided to trust Eru's skill and wait.
Tadaima.
She returned with what looked like a plastic container from a freezer. Were those frozen beans inside? I was a bean amateur, so I failed to determine their variety.
では、エルがマジうま料理を作るので、成田は命に関わるほどハードな筋トレでもしといてください。
I'm not sure why that's needed as a pretense to eating food, but okay.
わかった。
And he agrees. He's just going along with it. Eru rolled up her sleeves and walked over to the kitchen. She looked capable, which made my expectations soar. She's just gonna make, like, red beans. That's all she's gonna do. She's just gonna make, like, red beans, or make a natto or something. I don't know. She finished in about 20 minutes. It felt a bit short, but looking at what I was given, you could say she spent a lot of time on it.
これは何だろうか。
奥島風ラーメンです。
Dang, she made a ramen in 20 minutes? Hold up. The simple porcelain bowl that didn't suit the fancy living room was full of hot soup and noodles. This was indeed ramen.
つまり中華そばかね。
ノーン、ラーメンです。ラーメンと中華そばを一緒にしてはならない。奥島風ラーメン。しかも金時豆トッピング。ほら、ここに甘みのある豆を乗せているでしょ。
Well, dang, I'm sorry. I freaking thought you were gonna make something simple and you made a freaking ramen in 20 minutes? Like, what?
いいから食え。故郷の味を堪能して郷愁の涙に濡れなさい。
Putting aside her questionable fixations, I figured I had to eat it while it was still hot. Dang, that sounds good. What the heck?
これは
驚きましたか？これは奥島ラーメン、いわゆるすき焼き風ラーメンです。まずはネギ、もやし、メンマと定番を抑え、その上にバラ肉が盛り付けてあるのが特徴的です。
Oh my gosh. That sounds so freaking good.
これは何かね。私の記憶が正しければラーメンにもすき焼きにも豆はトッピングしなかったはずだが。
既成の観念にとらわれているとはまだまだですね。見ての通りの金時豆ですが、この渦を描くようなトッピングで東の海の大渦を表現したこれぞ名付けて名門大渦ラーメン。
A whirlpool ramen. Hmm.
本州との間の海峡は昔から厳しい荒さと渦で有名で、聖者を拒む暗き国への門、すなわち名門と呼ばれていました。それがなまって名門海峡と呼ばれるようになったのです。
I just think of when you're playing Pokemon Gold and Silver and you have that area where there's all those whirlpools you have to go through. That's what I'm imagining she's talking about right now.
本州との境にある島の名の由来が阿波への道という説はよく知られています。阿波とはすなわち T 県北部の湖名。
I did not know that.
古事記において最初に生まれた島が道であったなら、その行き着く先はさらに古い最初の聖者と死者の生まれた土地に他なりません。すなわち原初の混沌にも似た生と死のエネルギーの葛藤を一杯の丼の中に再現した至高のラーメン、それがこの名門大渦ラーメンなのです。
I don't know about y'all, but this ramen sounds a little too intense for me.
それから最後の生卵がポイントです。やはりすき焼きといえば生卵を入れてガシガシ混ぜて食べますよね。
Is that not dangerous to eat a raw egg like that, or does it cook?
しかしこれは混ぜて食べるのはアウトです。見た目も悪いですが甘辛スープの風味が飛んでしまいますので、最後にスルッとすくい取って食べるのがコツ。
This is also a little too much instructions for me to be eating food. I like to just eat it my own way and at my own pace. And with that, I got to eating it.
これは違う。明らかにこれまで食したラーメンとは別物。スープは醤油ベースか。飲んでみると甘辛く濃厚な味付けが口の中に広がる。濃いスープの味に合うようにか、固めに茹でられた細い麺の歯ごたえが驚きをもたらし、肉の味わいとハーモニーを奏でている。ふむふむ、なるほど、これは興味深い味だね。金時豆を噛んだ時のほのかな甘さが良いアクセントになっているのだね。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。わかればいいのです。
Not stopping to eat her own portion, Eru brought up the main subject.
昼間ポリコーのところで見てた資料、何か新たな事実が判明しましたか？真犯人見っけ的な。
Wait, what police documents are you talking about?
別に真犯人を探しているわけではないのだがね。
Oh.
サクは犯人を探そうとしているのかもしれないが。
Gosh, it's been too long since I played. I was trying to remember what police documents. Is that something to do with what Hishia got us?
もったいつけますね。
That wasn't my intention. I merely required more time to put my thoughts in order.
サクが外で追っていたのは206号
Yes,
事件。
yes, okay.
ミトリの件ではなかったことになる。その点が不可解だ。
Sorry, I was having to remember what she's investigating. I was like, oh yeah.
サクはミトリが消えたことを
He was the
気になる。
cannibal.
エル、君がそう思ったのであれば、おそらく間違いはないのだろう。私もサクの人となりからすれば、そうするのが自然だと思っている。それなのに、脇道にそれて別の事件を追うのは、私の知るおとなしサクらしくない。
Yeah, I agree. It was very uncharacteristic of her. I mean, I don't think it's out of character for her to like want to help solve a crime or something. I feel like that's a very noble thing to do, but it is very interesting that she'd be going off and doing that when she's supposed to be doing something else.
どうしても他のことを置いても手をつける必要があったとすれば、それはなぜだ？
I'm wondering if she either knew one of the victims or if she knew the person who's doing it. The insignia of the crowns was noble enough to stand at the front lines to defend what she believed in, so the situation didn't make sense to me.
ミトリの件に206号事件が関わっているとか。
Huh. Eru, that's a very good point. I'm trying to like brainstorm some theories here. Could it be somebody who gets stronger like the more etuolas or not just etuolas but HMIs they eat? Like something like crazy like that. I'm just gonna throw that theory out there.
それならば筋は通るだろうね。
Or maybe Mitori just ended up running into this person. I'm not sure.
成田的にはそうではないと。
206号事件は数年前の出来事だ。ミトリの学籍離脱と直接のつながりがあるとは考えにくい。
I don't know. This
そうと
game
も
like
限らないのか。
Oh, I'm sorry, he wasn't done. But I don't know, this particular scene kind of reminds me of Chaos Child a little bit. I mean, I won't give any spoilers for that, but little bits of it, you know, they're kind of like solving crimes and stuff. It kind of reminds me of that.
昼間見た資料の中には、ヒシアの報告書に記載されていないものもあった。例えば、正式な証拠とは認められていない現場横のビルの壁についていた足跡の痕跡。
どうして証拠とみなされなかったんですか？
足跡と断言できなかったのも理由の一つだが、ついていた場所が地上3階、およそ8メートルの高さだったからだよ。
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for someone to be able to run up a wall. I mean, just look at the freaking SSDs. They freaking do completely inhuman stuff, and they look like little maids, you know?
昼間見た通り、現場横のビルの壁には非常階段どころかはしごもついていない。状況的に何かの工事でついたものとも考えにくい。
じゃあどうやってつけたんですか？ヨガ的奥義で足が伸びるとかビヨーンと。
Yeah, sorry, that was us, by the way. You know, during our morning stretches, we just kind of went into town and accidentally put our feet on the wall, you know?
残念ながらヨーガとはもっと哲学的な修行法なのだよ。さて、その足跡をどうやってつけたかといえば、おそらく跳躍したのだろうね。
Oh yeah, most definitely.
地上3階まで？
地上3階の高さまで。
A master of certain body techniques could learn to control their center of gravity well enough to run up walls, but both Eru and I knew of a way to do it that didn't require any actual training.
人間を逸脱した身体能力。犯人は HMI なんですか？
Yeah, I'm really surprised this game doesn't have more of a My Hero Academia kind of feel, where, you know, they're at a school where you're like learning about your abilities, but there's a bunch of like crime going on from like people with unnatural abilities. I kind of think that's the reason why I have this theory that somebody like Miss Tokino is like giving people these abilities, and they've kind of already hinted at that, so it's not like it's my original idea or anything, but Just based on the information they've gave, I think that's the case, that they are artificially creating HMIs. Maybe there's a few that aren't artificial, but I think the majority of them are. So that's probably why you don't see more of a situation like that, where there's just a bunch of people like abusing these powers. So, it would be very surprising if there was an HMI doing it. I wonder who it would be.
可能性は高い。本来スクールに報告され処理される案件だろうが、206号事件はごく普通の猟奇事件として処理されてしまった。
Yeah, that's also a little bit suspicious too. If that was the case, it made sense why they couldn't catch the culprit. Abnormalities couldn't be gauged by the normal eye since it just wasn't equipped for it. And if the culprit was an HMI and had a connection to the Academy, perhaps there was a link between the incident and Mitori's disappearance. For better or for worse, the icon announcing someone's return popped up. Saku had arrived. She instantly entered the living room. We fell silent. She looked at us in surprise before passing by and heading to her room. Okay. That's a pretty awkward interaction. She didn't even say hi to us.
Saku, おかえりなさい。ただいま、エル。
The curt, dry response didn't sound anything like the Saku I knew. Had something happened, or...
何やら楽しそうだ。おや？いい匂いがしているね。
Wait, was Taigi with her? We were then joined by Taigi. With that, everyone other than Tamao had returned.
ちょうど夕食をとっていたところでね。君たちもどうかね。
せっかく誘ってくれたのにすまない。遅くなりそうだったので、食事は済ませてきてしまったんだ。
Oh, so you were smart and ate something while you were out.
いや、応用な私はその程度では気にしないとも。シェフとして腕を振るうのはエルなのだしね。
As we wore friendly masks and had a basic exchange, Eru glared at me, excuse me. She probably didn't like that I'd said you two, basically telling Taigi that Saku had been out.
健単な玉緒が席にいないということは、彼女はまだ戻ってきてないのかな。
I'm still trying to figure out if Taigi really is a bad guy or not. Like, obviously some of his intentions seem to get in our way, but I don't know if they're necessarily intentionally thrown at us, you know? Because if you just remember Tamao's ending, he ended up killing Kurofune for us, which is just weird to me. I'm trying to figure out what his motivation is or what his goals are.
いわゆる不良とは夜行性の動物と同じだよ。彼らは皆夜遊び好きだ。困ったものだとは思わないかね。
些細な事故で命を落としてしまうこともある。時の先生のようにね。サク、君からもあまり夜出歩くのは感心しないと伝えてやってくれないか。
Oh. Saku was walking up the stairs, but Taigi's words made her stop in place. She turned around, but still didn't say a word. I felt the air in the living room solidify.
野蛮な乙女は風のように身軽だ。狭い場所に収まっているのは性に合わないのだろうね。
I don't know, I feel like Taigi's the kind of person who would go wandering around at night, even though you're not supposed to.
ほどほどならばね。やりすぎれば問題にもなる。サクはどう思う？
Taigi, why do you keep mentioning Saku? What's going on here?
そうね。言って聞かせておくわ。
I wonder if Taigi's been like investigating what Saku's doing too. He keeps like poking at her. Taigi shared our dorm, but so there was no chance that he wasn't aware of Saku's recent activities. However, it didn't seem like he'd reported her actions to the academy. Was he keeping the information to himself? Taigi, the son of the chairman Kurofune Mikado, considering the fact that he'd suddenly joined us as Etoilas, the obvious assumption was that he was the enemy. The fact that I thought he wouldn't act against the crowns amused me. Taigi was an enemy, and even if he wasn't that, he was Kurofune's son. That's what I'm saying, though. I think he has his own motivations. Like, I'm trying to figure out what they are. An old faded memory floated to the top of my mind. There was once a time where a man who hadn't yet become Shinri Narita and a man who hadn't yet become Taigi Mikado watched the same scene. However, it had all been lost. Looking back on it brought me nothing but a desolate sense of emptiness and a fiery rage so potent it scorched my own body. As for Saku, she hid the cold expression she'd shown for a moment and had returned to her usual self.
心配といえば
Hold
君も
up.
だけどね。最近の策はどこか疲れていて危うい感じがするよ。
Hey, you're not allowed to do this, okay? Only me and Taigi can have this, like, side-by-side glance thing. And we're supposed to turn our backs away from each other. That's how this game works. And you're breaking it. You're not supposed to do this.
そんなこと。
高崎くんと喧嘩したんだろう。珍しいね。
たまたまよ。女の子だって喧嘩くらいしますわよ。ほほほ。
Yeah, I would say girls probably have fights with each other more than guys do. Saku and Eru quickly worked to change the subject.
君たちでもそんなことがあるのかい？
ありますよ。生理用品はナプキンがいいかタンポンがいいかで血みどろ大喧嘩です。ねえ。
Yeah, I think those would be kind of bloody fights, I'd imagine. Saku's just so confused.
まあそういう感じ。
Eru said something odd again, so Saku had no choice but to play along, even though it was obvious she didn't want to. As distant as they appeared recently, they were, in a way, still the closest étoiles. Being on the same wavelength was second nature to them.
そうかい？それなら構わないんだが。
And Taigi's just completely unfazed by it. He's just like, oh, okay, cool. Taigi squinted and nodded before turning to face me and whispering something.
成田、君も気がつけば注意をしてやってほしい。僕は空子の友人たちがつまらない騒動に巻き込まれたり、そんなことにはなってほしくないんだ。
Hold up, why are you specifically mentioning Sorako? I'm really confused that people keep mentioning specific people and it just doesn't seem like it fits the situation, so it makes me think like they have some sort of connection with them or they're doing something. This was the first time I'd heard him speak Sorako's name. He'd stayed in the dorm for a month already, so I'd heard him call out to her many times. But that time, it sounded exactly like it had 7 years ago. I felt like I'd heard the voice of my childhood friend at last. It was like a fossil of something long since lost. Along with that, I saw a glint of sadness in his cold, bored eyes.
学友の力になるのは当然だ。私からも頼もう。サクも気をつけてやってくれるかね。
Our eyes met. There was no spark-raising intensity between us. Instead, it felt like I'd stuck my hand in an unfathomably deep swamp.
ええ、わかったわ。じゃあ、今日のところはもう休むことにするから。はい。おやすみなさい、サク。
おやすみ、サク。
おやすみ。明日また良い夜明けが君に訪れること。
Saku disappeared into the second floor. The three of us had nothing else to say, so the day soon came to a close. It's a very interesting interaction. Or so I thought. Okay, what's going on? Hold up. I'm excited. Oh, it's just you. Get out of here, Eru. I thought something big was gonna happen.
大義の野郎にサクのことを漏らしやがって。奴は理事長のボンボン、つまりエネミー。懲罰的賠償金を要求しますよ。
I'll give you tree fitty. How about that? Emotionless but breathing raggedly through her nose, Eru came to my room. Letting her run wild in the hallway risked attracting Sakura Taigi's attention, so I let her inside and she instantly went off on me.
日付も変わろうという時刻に男の部屋を訪れるものではないよ。身の危険がある。
Yeah, hey, we're trying to sleep here. Get out.
人目がないのを見計らっていきなりハッキングに及んじゃうぜという日本語ですね。
Hold up. I mean, I'm not a master of the Japanese language, but I don't think that's in the language at all.
いや、そのままズバリ私の身が危険だという意味だ。
Yeah, pretty much. That little honey trapper was far too great a threat, but there was few places in the academy where we could chat in peace. I thoroughly inspected my room, so it was relatively safe, and thus we had no choice but to use it.
言葉を選んで言うが、外堀を巧妙に埋められながら、真綿で首を絞められているような気分だ。
I mean, that doesn't sound too great. That sounds pretty painful, actually. And I walked away from the holy creed of the well-endowed and fallen into the abyss of the two-dimensional. That would have been truly terrifying.
それよりも理由、説明をしろ、説明を。やっぱりちょっぴり待ってください。
Make up your mind, Eru. She interrupted me before I got in a proper response.
何を待つのだ。
部屋に戻ったのでリラックスしてから成田の弁解を聞きます。
応用な私だが、あえて言わせてもらおう。一つにはここは私の部屋で、君の部屋ではない。二つには弁解することは何もなく。
I explained my correct point of view, but of course Eru ignored me.
ノーブルたるものが些細な違いにいちいち目くじらを立てるようでは器の小ささが知れますよ。ま、成田んぼはなかなか凶悪でしたけど。
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold up, what are we talking about here? What gun? Eru took off all of her clothes beside her shirt, folded everything, and placed them in one place.
何をしている。
Yeah, what are you doing? An attempt at seduction, perhaps?
世の中には萌えと呼称されるものは数多いですが、本物の萌えは一握り。この格好は人間の本能に嫌おなく突き刺さる真なる萌えの形の一つ。
A little weird if you ask me.
浮か萌え。裸ワイシャツのフェチ要素とブカブカのシャツを女の子が着ることで現れるチラリズムの高次元融合が無限の力で想像力を刺激する。
I mean, I suppose I can see your point, but
そいつに触れることは萌えを意味する。
Moe is supposed to be cute, though. That's more like fetishy or like, I don't know, sexy, I guess.
というわけで自分部屋ではこの格好の方が落ち着くのです。
いや、しかし異性の部屋でそれはあまりに。
Narita, we've already come to this conclusion that she really doesn't care.
萌え萌えですか？浴場しましたか？辛抱たまらんですか？
ありえない。自分の名誉のために断言しよ
う。では問題ないですね。釈明を聞かせてもらいましょう。納得できなければ罰として成田の恥ずかしい声を世界配信します。
Okay, I want to get to that in just 1 second, but I find it interesting that Eru's the one girl so far in the game that he doesn't like, I don't know, go after, I guess. Like, there was the one scene where, you know, like she shows her panties and then he goes after her boobs, right? Just to prove his point that he cares about boobs more. But I find it very interesting that like he doesn't like pursue her because I feel like she's a very strong personality and she ends up being the one that kind of pursues him and makes him feel uncomfortable, which I kind of like seeing. I feel like Narita's usually like so confident and so assertive, and so it's nice to see him being a little bit more submissive in this case, just because he's, I feel like, a little bit intimidated by Eru at times. I feel like he doesn't really know how to handle her, for lack of a better word. So I find that very interesting. But please do not upload anything, Eru. No uploading of anything that might have happened between you and I. Because gosh, I remember the scene she's talking about. It's very weird. Very uncomfortable to watch. How unfortunate. I had to calm my heart and make it as still as a statue. My love for full breasts was paramount to my view of the world.
いいかね。玉緒や私ならともかく、素人の策が密かに出入りしても完全に隠し通すのは無理だろう。私が言わなくとも大義はある程度気がついていたはずだ。
I mean, to be fair, Taigi does have ways of monitoring stuff that happens outside the academy.
だからこちらから切り出して大義の反応を見た。どの程度策の不在を重要視しているのか。
The results were unexpected. I didn't know how long that would have held true, but apparently he had yet to report Saku's actions to Kurofune.
ところでエル、君がいるのならちょうどいい。
ちょうどいいというと、花束とかくれるんですか？それともラブポエムでも読んでくれますか？ 部下シャツの下をチロリと覗いてみたいとか。
That will be completely unnecessary.
君にいくつか確かめておきたい。
は？エルのことが気になるってやつですか？
Shut up,
はあ、
Eru.
恥ずかしい。師匠ププー。
Shut up. She laughed without any expression on her face. What was she expecting here? Honestly, I failed to grasp her thoughts at all. Going back to my point, he doesn't know how to read her at all.
206号事件について改めて尋ねておこう。エル、君は何か知っているのではないのかね？
どうしてそう思いますか？
I know, I'm curious to hear his reasoning too.
昼間事件の名前が挙がった時らしい反応があったからね。
ふーん。いちいち細かいところを見落とさないやつです。
That is a good point, because she said that she hasn't looked into Saku's actions for herself at all. So that would have been new information to her, but it sounds like she's already familiar with it, making me think that there is some connection between Saku and this incident. That's why she's so interested in it. I couldn't tell whether she was impressed or annoyed. She placed a finger on her mouth and looked up at the ceiling. Her stare was so expressionless that it seemed downright robotic. A moment later, that impression faded. Then she grinned, opened her mouth, and spread her arms.
いいでしょう。話しましょう。
Okay, that was very weird. Let's see what she has to say about that, though. Like I had expected, she knew something, though I didn't know why she'd kept quiet before, or why she decided to reveal her hand after I questioned her.
実は、バーン、超真実。事件で死んだのは自分の持ち主なのです。
Uh-oh, is this where we learn that Eru is actually a robot, and that's why she kind of acts like a robot sometimes? I fell silent, unsure of how to react. What did she mean by owner? Since the dawn of humanity, people were counted among the most valuable commodities. They were exchanged as beasts of burden, subjects of desire, pieces of art, proof of trust, combat strength, or even medicine or food. The world was full of people who wished to control others, trample all over their dignity and lives, assert their authority, and profit while doing so. Human trafficking affected not just the less developed nations in Africa or Central Asia, but also the more advanced nations in the West, as well as Japan.
君の言う持ち主とはどういった意味でなのかね？
言葉のままです。自分は物でした。それだけの話です。物であるからには所有者がいる。それも当然です。
I found her logic hard to digest, but I somehow managed. Oddly enough, the word tool seemed to fit the unexpressive girl rather
ど
well.
んな環境にあったにせよ、自分を道具と呼ぶのは関心はしない。
I don't know. I feel like you could describe somebody like Tamao or even Soriko as a tool, just based on how they were used growing up. I mean, obviously they aren't one, but that's how certain people viewed them.
まあ、事実は事実なので、自分は物で所有者がいて、それが死んじまいました。
I don't know. Is this actually gonna be the plot twist? Like, is she going to be like a robot or like an artificial human?
高崎は代々、とある家に仕えて、そいつらの使う道具を用意する一族でした。先天性のハローを持つ子供がそれ。つまり、このエルなどです。
ハローを持つことを前提にした特殊な役目を含む方向ということかね。
Eru raised her finger and went tisk tisk.
道具は道具です。方向っていうのは、あくまでも人間のやることでしょ？高崎の道具は感情を持ちません。迷いません。機能があるだけです。そうなるように育てられるのです。まさに高崎500年の匠の技。高崎は主の家の後継者に与えられます。代替わりしたら新しいものをまた一つ。一種のステータスというか、まあお歳暮みたいなものというわけです。お、我ながらうまいこと言いましたよね。
I'm still very confused. Yes, tool did seem fitting. It wasn't that they didn't acknowledge emotions or get rid of them. Instead, they simply denied them as a function. The Takazaki family had spent the last 500 years perfecting techniques to make humans less humanoid. I couldn't imagine what kind of methods they employed, but they seemed to have had the conviction to discover them and accomplish it.
しかしですね、高崎の血は次第に薄れて、最先端であるこの L に至っては不良品だったのです。
Okay, so they're not trying to imply that she's actually like a robot or something. I was like, are they really gonna do something crazy like that? Like, is that gonna be the plot twist? It sounds like they just have trained for so many years to become more emotionless. Hopefully I'm gathering that right.
不良品か。私には有能に思えるが。
いやいや、とんでもないですよ。
I understood what she meant by that. A tool's role was to fulfill its function perfectly. Anything less or more was an abject failure. Was this a blessing for Eru or a curse? As someone who wasn't her, I had no way of truly knowing.
ただまあ、L の持ち主は物好きなやつだったので、不良品を面白がって買ったのです。
その持ち主が206号事件の被害者か。
It would have been a tragedy if it was someone close to her, but this was a man who treated her as an object. So, did she find joy in her emancipation? She spoke with indifference, so it seemed like it was neither.
それで L はどうなったのかね。
事件で持ち主が死んで、不良品の自分は引き取り手がいなくなりました。危うく廃棄処分危機一髪みたいなこともあったみたいですが、持ち主の家の新しい跡継ぎが便利な使い道を思いついたのです。黒船氏とのコネクションを作るための引き出物としてスクールに入学させてしまおうと。ささ、お歳暮でございます。
結果的に物の立場から解放されたということかね。
She once again clicked her tongue while moving her fingers to the
道
sides.
具を勘違いしてますね。そんなお涙頂戴の三文芝居が通用すると思われているとは。高崎500年の自称腐敗の歴史も安く見られたものです。道具は道具です。不良品というだけで。それを拾ったのはサクです。
So, is she trying to say that Saku, essentially treated her not like an object and kind of gave her some of her humanity back?
サクに所有されたので、不良品にもようやく持ち主ができて、ああよかったと。サクのおかげで不良なのも、ま、それはさておき。自分、どうにか生きるっぽいことができるようになりました。完璧。
Eru grinned, but I couldn't tell what she found so amusing.
私から見れば L は強い個性と有能さがあるが、ここの学生たちの多くよりもよほどまっとうに生きているように思えるよ。
道具に何を求めてるんですか？もともと心も意志もないものなんだから生きてるように見えますが、ぽいだけですよ。
I don't know. I don't entirely believe that. I think you've done a few things that seem like they were of your own free will.
まあ、どう思うかは成田のお好きにどうぞ。
What a weak reaction. Perhaps she wasn't lying when she implied that she didn't feel emotions. At least it explained why she acted so normal when she should have suspected me, or why she was so absurd in general. However, I couldn't bring myself to accept her words completely. Was it simply because I didn't want to? Would an emotionless person have cracked a funny joke? Would someone like that have enjoyed pointless chatter with a group of friends? Would they have complained about bad coffee, made great food, or gotten fixated on relationships of equal terms?
こういう流れで来てるんで、自分が策のためになることをやろうとするのは自然当然。策のためなら成田のチンチンもいじるみたいな。
Why would that help Saku?
それは必要ないと言ったはずだが。
I finally understood Eru Takazaki's true nature. She had lived as an object, which explained her lack of presence. Presence conveyed the intensity of a person, the potential for a single individual to shake the world. To an object like Eru Takazaki, individuality was unneeded and had to be removed.
L の持ち主だった人物。事件の被害者はどのような人物だったのか。
こりゃ難しいクエスチョンですね。一言で表すなら、クズといったところでしょうか。
I mean, I would assume someone who treats a person like an object would be a scumbag. How straightforward. Her expression didn't change, but I heard some disdain in her voice. He must have mistreated her.
地方の金持ち家系のダメ息子の学生です。
Oh, that sounds familiar.
恨みを持つやつを探したら一山いくらでいたんじゃないでしょうか。事件もそういった怨恨が大爆発と思われていました。
どうやらただの事件ではなさそうだな。ではエルから見て彼のことで何かおかしなことはなかったかね。例えば事件の前に普段と違う行動をとっていたとか。
I'm sorry, the way like her character just like slightly tilted. My question made Eru tilt her head. It reminded me of an owl I'd seen with my sister. I'm dying to know though, why does he keep thinking of his sister when he sees her? Like, how is that connected? Like, I can throw out some guesses. I'm just not confident enough to say anything right now. I just don't understand. It has something to do, I'm sure, with her, you know, I keep wanting to say quirk, but her halo. And I'm dying to know. I'm pretty sure we'll find out soon, but they keep mentioning it. They keep hinting at it, and I'm like, what is it? The fluffy and adorable owls were birds of prey, and both my sister and I found them to be wonderful animals. Eru spoke of the incident as if it had nothing to do with her, despite her being one of the most affected. In her mind, she seemed almost uninvolved, though if she truly was an object, that was natural. After tilting her head for a good few moments, she turned back and brought her hands together in realization.
死ぬ直前、持ち主は後天性型のハローに覚醒しました。
Okay. It felt like a fine thread had appeared before my very eyes. Gosh, I feel like... Okay, this is how I feel about this game sometimes. I feel like I'm doing a puzzle, right? And I have a bunch of the puzzle pieces in my hand, and they make something absolutely, like, amazing, and something I'm so excited to see, right? But I don't have a picture of what it's supposed to look like when it's done, and I'm, like, slowly putting these puzzle pieces together, and I can tell it's gonna be something good, and I just don't know what it is, and that's how I feel right now. I'm, like, very confused about where this is going, because I feel like there's something that's gonna happen, and I'm gonna be so excited for it, and I just don't know what it is yet. I couldn't sleep well that night, even after I've gotten comfortable in my bed. Well, it's hard when we keep getting interrupted at midnight. The room was air-conditioned, but I felt like I was boiling in there. Still, I eventually managed to drift off into the depths of slumber. Sweat gathered on me. However, my skin felt so unpleasant as it stuck to my night clothing that I ended up waking up in the middle of the night. It was rare for me to sleep so poorly or so unpleasant. Were my instincts picking up an ominous presence? Even after I considered drinking some coffee to help me wake up, I noticed the cause of my poor sleep. She's just freaking sleeping. I hadn't noticed, but Eru had snuck into my room and in my bed. Her position made her resemble a cat. She was obviously sleeping well, but it was clear that her presence and warmth had made it difficult for me to sleep soundly. Yeah, I can't sleep with anyone against me like that.
珍しくも安眠だったらしい。それを妨害してくれるとは迷惑極まりない。
How rude. It had happened again, and my patience was running thin. She'd actually snuck in without revealing her presence. Also, this room had an electric lock on it. How did she even enter? I felt like someone had clawed my heart. If Eru Takazaki had been an assassin, Shinri Narita's life would have already ended. Was it a result of Eru's halo? What kind of power was it then? Eru called herself a tool. During Incident 206, she had to have been in possession of her owner. Was this girl truly what she appeared to be? Why tease me with that? Why start having all these thoughts and then not go through with it? The way I'd woken up was odd, so I turned on the light. If I turned on the light, Eru would have woken up as well. I'd heard that the smell of coffee also woke up most individuals. With that in mind, I had no choice but to do nothing. No reading, no coffee. Instead, I simply killed time in the dark room. Nearly an hour later, the time came and I prepared to leave. I quickly changed my clothes and tried to sneak out of the room, but I felt a pillow suddenly hit my back.
いい仮眠ができました。さて、 どこへ行くのか知りませんが、連れてってください。
It seemed like I really wasn't at my best. Was it the fabled slump? Had Eru noticed me when I was trying to hide my presence? More importantly, would Shin and Narita have avoided serious damage if the pillow was a blade or a
こ
bomb?
れがエルのハローなのかね。
Yes, please. I want to know what it
企
is.
業秘密です。
Oh, no! Don't tell me that. It just feels like this game constantly blue balls you. Eru never backed down when she insisted on something. I could have told her not to come, but I knew she would never listen. I had ways to deal with her, but there was no guarantee that they would be fully effective. I had the option of shaking her as she tailed me, but I didn't know a thing about Eru's halo, so that seemed dangerous. I couldn't sense her presence after all, which made me as powerless against her as a puppet. If Eru's halo gave her the ability to catch up to me, all my efforts would have been rendered moot. Perhaps it was safer to merely keep her within my view.
ついてきたまえ。
I'd gathered my resolve. Not having a choice, I took Eru with me. To play it safe, I went and checked whether Saku was in her room, and indeed, I sensed her presence there. There was no actual problems.
ここからどこへ？走るんですか？しんどいのでセグを出してください。
Did they have to censor segue?
ここから先は以前と同じルートだ。
Eru's movements remained sluggish since she'd just woken up, and so I picked her up.
お、
Before she finished her sentence, I dashed off into the night.
急ぎたまえ。国元に遅れると、主に私が非常にまずい状況に陥る。
目が回る。
Due to Eru's rude interruption, I ended up leaving later than planned.
あれでヒシアは時間にうるさい。その上怒ると、非常に地味な嫌がらせをするので、地味に困ってしまうのだ。
地味というと？
以前、密かに歯ブラシの毛を1ミリほどカットされたときは、実害は全くないものの、自分のものではないような違和感で、とても気持ち悪かった。
Okay, that's really weird.
マジ地味です。
We arrived at the grove and Hishia silently revealed herself.
遅刻です、ご主人様。
時には時間から解放され、自由でありたい時もあるとは思わないかね。
The moment she spotted me, a look of anger graced her face. I'd long since grown used to the sight.
時間から解放されるのはご自由ですが、ヒシアが被る迷惑から解放されるのは感心いたしません。
You can break free from the binds of time, but you cannot bother your maid over it.
以後気をつけるとしよう。
とっても気持ちよかったです。
Uncomfortable silence fell upon us. I felt ready to break out in a cold sweat.
私の人生に余計な苦難を増やさないでもらいたい。
Hishia looked at me with a wide grin on her face, and I did my best to avoid her gaze. I love Hishia so much.
というわけで、成田様でしたら、問題なく計画を実行できるものと、ヒシア、思っております。必要ないとは思われますが、手助けがどうしても必要というのであれば、ヒシア、いやいやお手伝いをしてもよい、と考えております。
Wow, begrudgingly. She had completed the preparations for the third act.
エルが地元民アドバンテージを利用して地域の案内が可能ですよ。場所が県内じゃありませんが、全く知らない場所でもないですし。
エルルンと成田様、年頃の関係のお二人なら、肉欲で結ばれた関係のお二人なら、性的な力の消化でもって、イシアがいなくとも、計
Wait,
画を
hold
実
up.
行できるのではないでしょうか。
What power of lust? What do you mean?
だから違うと言っているのに。
Yeah, that's the completely wrong idea. The only problem we had was Eru, who tagged along like it was only natural. I intended to hide from her before approaching Hishia. However, that hadn't happened. I didn't know why, but she seemed to be on a wavelength similar to my dear maids, which made her all the more troublesome. Had I, Shinui and Narita, made a grave mistake by introducing them to each other? They were a gestalt akin to 2 times 2 becoming 8, and I was the only one who would suffer the consequences of any of their actions.
ところでメイドさん、
ヒシアとお呼びください。
シアさん、第3のターゲットとやらは何者なのですか？
To Shinui Narita, this was an extremely heavy question, and because it had come from Eru Takazaki's mouth, I couldn't just keep my mouth shut. Hishia kept quiet and maintained a poker face, showing off her exquisite skills as a maid.
それは私の個人的な事情なのだよ、高崎エル。
つまり他に漏れると成田超ヤバスというわけですか。こそこそ動き回っていたのも腑に落ちます。いえいえ、エルはクラウン1の作詞ですので最初からお見通しでしたが。超安心してください。自分お口チャックした秘密にはマジ口堅いです。必要なのは策を守ってもらうことだけなので、それ以外ならどんな悪辣な条件でも問題なく飲みます。
Well, I'm glad somebody doesn't mind what we're doing. I mean, Soriko kind of didn't mind for a little bit, but freaking Tamao definitely did.
それを信用しろと。
Though I had few options in that particular situation. I've allowed Eru to get too close to me, and my inability to know what she was thinking left me with little wiggle room. In all honesty, this had been all set in stone the moment Eru caught me returning from the end of the second act.
自分道具だと言ったじゃないですか。飾ってある掛け軸を気にして悪巧みする悪代官がいますか？道具相手には何も遠慮はいりません。
Yeah, but you're more loyal to Saku, and what if Saku wanted you to reveal what I had been doing? Like, surely you wouldn't hold back, would you?
いいだろう。話そう。
成田様、よろしいのですか？
この先隠し通すのは困難だ。ここで拒絶しても、言葉を浪しても、ごまかしても、エルは自分が納得できなければ好き勝手について回るだろう。
Probably true.
よくわかってますね。花丸をあげましょう。
Booyah. Gold star, baby. Let's go.
結果が予想できない分始末に悪い。手元に置いた方がマシというものだよ。
承知いたしました。
It looked like Hishia wanted to say something, but instead she simply acted like the perfect maid she was and approved of my decision. Eru remained silently as she waited for our exchange to end. Her composure helped me gather my resolve.
第3のターゲットとは桂木新山だ。
狙いはやっちゃうことですか？
Hold up, where has Soriko been? I haven't seen her in a while and I can't remember.
そうだ。
そうですか。わかりました。
Eru, you're the best. I'm so glad you're not saying crap about me doing this. Her reaction appeared unexpectedly mild. Too mild, in fact. After all, she surely knew that Shinzen Katsuragi was Soriko's father. Hishia, apparently feeling the same, broke her silence and joined in our conversation, which I hadn't expected.
ヒシアの完璧調査によると、桂木様はエルルンの語学友の父親のはずですが、よろしいのですか？
おおむね OK です。約束通り策を救ってくれるなら誰にも何も言いませんよ。ついでだから桂木の野郎をやっちゃうのもお手伝いしてやります。
Wow,
さす
okay.
が七つ道具自分超役に立つ。
I mean, I'm sure we won't say no.
ご自身で OK とおっしゃるのなら、
Yes, she was just
よろ
like,
しいの
wow.
です。
Eru's reply sounded extremely straightforward, but that just made it harder to comprehend. Even Hishia looked confused. However, she quickly recovered, pulled out a portable device, and showed me the display.
2065事件と関連がありそうなデータについて、取り急ぎ追加で調べたものでございます。
Okay.
さすがはヒシア。この私の次女だけはある。
I took the device, glanced through the contents, and furrowed my brow. It displayed information about several events that had happened around Okushima since Incident 206. Why had she showed that to me? Knowing Hishia, there was no way it was unrelated, but it still seemed odd. I felt an ominous shadow fall over me and kept reading, but a conversation that completely shattered the tense air occurred right next to me.
しかし、 桂木様の件、マジよろしいのですか？ご主人様に手ごめにされた上、このような悪事に手を染めざるを得ないエルルンの未来が、ヒシア、心配です。
She's still calling her Erurun.
案ずるより有無がやすしです、ヒシアさん。いやいや、心遣いは無用なのです。自分、超道具ですので。
I'm gonna be honest though, it's very uncomfortable like hearing someone call themselves a tool, especially like if they aren't like a robot or something. Like that would be different, but this is like a human being calling themselves one. It makes me very uncomfortable.
先ほどもそうおっしゃっていましたね。道具とはこれまた何というか、ある意味懐かしい表現です。
懐かしいというと、メイドさん。
I had a bad feeling about this. This conversation quickly turned into an uncomfortable direction, so I calmly stopped them.
待ちたまえエル。その問題についてだが。
聞きたいですか？聞きたいですね。いいでしょう。お答えいたしましょう。ヒシアも身近にその昔、道具と呼ばれていた身の上の女の子を知っているのです。ドギューン
ほうほう。人間を道具呼ばわりするのが自分のステータスとか思ってるエロゲな輩は世間に吐いて捨てるほどいますからね。
I mean, I'm fine calling someone a tool as an insult. Like that, if that's what you want to do, fine. But naturally, the two talkative females did not even listen to me.
その子は下から3番目くらいの貧しい階層の出でした。そういうものの未来は生まれた時から決まっております。さっさとのたれ死ぬか、生きて道具になるか。
I'm assuming Hishia is talking about herself?
ほうほう。
しかし中には例外もあるものです。この国のことわざでは、捨てる仏あれば拾うファラオありと申します。その子の場合、偶然通りがかった物好きな方がおられまして。
拾ってくれたわけですか。自分ワクワクしてきました。
Gosh, this sounds like a freaking novel.
ええ、まあその子は感謝したのですが、相手がどうにも変な目で見るので、どうかしたのかと尋ねてみたところ。
I really hope we get to see more of Hishia's backstory once we do her route. Like, I'm gonna be so excited to see how her and Narita met. I think it's gonna be awesome. Because I'm assuming that's what she's talking about right now, but I want to see it visualized a little bit.
ピチピチヤングの頃からバインバインだったおっぱいをいきなりこう
揉まれたおっぱいを最初からエロス目的。
Eru, you're way too into this stuff.
それならまだ
Please
しも
stop.
揉むしかしないのです。
Yeah, I think we all know who that is.
そこまで来て揉むしかし
Now
な
I'm
いとは
100% who it
なん
is.
という下手で変態変態変態。
昔の話ではない。
That was a long time ago. He just sounds like he has like this deep regret. Like, well, when you say it like that, it makes you sound like kind of a bad guy, you know. And then he just takes a sip of his drink.
超最悪です。昔の話と男は言いました。
エルルン、このように男とはこれっぽっちも信用できないけだものです。くれぐれもたやすく心を許したりされてしまわないように。
Hey, that's not true.
しかし誰にしては自分相手には超ギンギンで凶悪になっていました。
What? No.
ほほう、それは超興味深いことを伺いました。
Freaking, they're both looking at me with the same look.
やはりリトルハンターなのですね。変態。
Hey, that's not true.
時に言われなき苦難にも耐え忍ばねばならないんだね。
Freaking Narita's over here getting all philosophical. That was great. I loved that conversation. I finished checking the materials Hishia presented, and there was nothing that was cracked there that cracked the mystery of Incident 206 wide open. Even if the pieces brought me closer to the truth, some of them were more important details were still missing. That was why I had merely developed a hunch. I felt like the truth was beyond the mist, staring slowly and solemnly. Shinrei Narita's instincts had become unreliable, so there was a chance that he'd missed the mark yet again. However, on the off chance that they were right, I knew it was a problem I had no chance of handling on my own. The next morning, I felt a presence and walked out of the living room a bit earlier than usual, where as expected, I found Taigi. Conveniently, Saku hadn't woken up yet.
朝からどこへ行くんですか？
Eru, who stayed in my bed again last night, had followed after me like a shadow. Not even giving me time to respond, she walked through the living room. She headed for the sofa where Taigi was sitting with a side profile full of ennui.
今朝は早いね、成田。何事かあったのかな？
Hey, I can wake up early. Taigi asked me that question upon sensing my presence, not even bothering to look back as if it was a bother.
おはようございますです。大義のボンボン。
少し話がある。
I looked down at him from a side and spoke in a willful tone that didn't let him talk back. His maids never accompanied him to the dorm, which made this my only chance to talk with him one-on-one.
君から話とは珍しいね。成田はもう少し慎重にことを。
I grabbed him by his slender arm and held it with enough strength to leave a mark, making it obvious I had no time to waste on such trivialities. Apparently, he realized how serious I was as he slowly looked up at me. I feel like some very gay energy right now. Look at this. Our eyes met. I didn't know what ran through his mind as he sat there, but a few moments later he stood up soundlessly and slowly.
続きは君の部屋で構わないかい？
Can we continue this in your room?
それで結構だ。
Fine by me. Okay, I'll stop. The only ones in my room were me, Taigi, and Eru. Of course, Eru follows us. An Avenger, the son of his chief target, and a knight. Up until recently, this would have been a strange, no, a completely unlikely combination. Tamao had already set out for some early morning training, and based on her presence, Saku remained in her room, though I no longer truly trusted my senses as much as before.
大義、サクを助けるため手を貸してほしい。
I skipped the pleasantries and cut to the chase. Eru forgot to breathe for a moment before raising her voice in surprise.
こいつ何を言い出してるんですか？というかありなんですか？それは。
事態は予想より悪いかもしれない。HMI に詳しい人間の力が必要だ。それも早急に。その分野にはさすがに私の手も及ばない。
This is interesting, though. This is going to give us some more insight onto what Taigi's motivations are, if he's willing to help us.
ならば、サクを救いたい者同士助け合うのはごく自然な成り行きではないかね。
ごく自然というより超自然。その人選でどうしてこやつなんですか？サクを救いたい者同士だってその前提から怪しいです。
帝黒船の息子だ。そんなことは言われるまでもない。
I hated having to deal with him, but I knew I couldn't afford to go to the Academy's researchers. I required someone who wouldn't leak the secrets of the Academy, someone who cared for Saku, and someone who knew a lot about HMIs all rolled into one package, and after much thought I realized that only Taigi fit the bill. Eru still doubted my decision, but logic told her that my choice was correct.
僕にできることなら手を貸そう。詳しい話を聞かせてもらえるかい？しんちゃん。
What's the Shinchan stuff? What do you mean?
何ですか？その微妙なちゃん付けは。
I love how she just appears in the corner.
親愛の表現さ。成田真理だから、しんちゃん。
しんちゃん、どこまで行こうか。
Interesting. Okay.
感謝する。帝大。だが、呼ぶときはこれまで通り偉大なる成田様で結構だ。
Ah, yes, the usual. Totally. Everyone calls us that. Yep.
誰がそういう呼び方してるんですか？
Thank you, Eru.
時間がないんだろう。ここよりも安全な場所を知っている。すぐ出かけよう。話はそれからにしよう、しんちゃん。
I wonder if Taigi knows.
こいつも人の話を聞かないやつですね。
I wonder if he remembers all the stuff that happened in the past. I mean, he's got to some degree. Taigi took me to Tokino Yomasei's old office on the first floor of the school building. I didn't know if it was because the owner was gone or because he had authority as the chairman's son, but he managed to open the lock with his device, so we simply walked in. The room was still a mess, there was many precious documents around, and not everyone felt that they could touch them. Taigi used his device to open up a control layer and issue a command.
コーディリア、室内のモニターをすべてカット。直前15分間の記録を削除しろ。
コンパーメントのモニターをすべてカット。記録の一部を削除します。
これで部屋の中は安全だ。それにここなら必要な資料がほとんど揃っている。相談にはうってつけだろ。
I will say though, like doing that kind of ballsy move at the start of this route did open up a lot more opportunities for us. Now we can kind of get some insight into the academy that we couldn't with Miss Tokino around.
記録を削除してもこの部屋のロックを外せるものは多くないはずだ。本格的に調べられればごまかしきれるとは思えないが、いいのかね。
自分のことなら何とかするよ。それよりも友達を助けないと。
感謝する。
Okay.
サクはスクールの開校当初からのメンバーなんだ。僕にとっても友人だよ。
I wasn't aware you guys had such a close relationship.
このボンボン本気みたいですね。
それよりも詳しい話を聞かせてくれるかい？
I nodded and spoke up. Incident 206. That bizarre, violent, mysterious incident, which I'd assumed was the work of an HMI, once shook Okushima and its surroundings to their core. A few years had passed since then, and like most bizarre events, there was no repeats or similar happenings. The culprit had never been caught, and people honestly believed it was an isolated incident. But was that really true? Ever since Incident 206, strange happenings had popped up in Okushima and the surrounding area. Most of them went like so. In a certain area, a young person suddenly died. Then for anywhere from a few days up to 2 weeks after that, multiple people also died in quick succession, as if there was a link between their deaths. The chain of tragedies, unbefitting of a rural area, may have made the locals spread unscientific rumors. Then all of a sudden, the incident simply ended without rhyme or reason. In the end, everyone accepted that it's just an unfortunate happenstance and got on with their lives, quickly forgetting about it. Until a few months later, in a seemingly unrelated area, a similar pattern of incidents sprung up. It was as though a malicious curse had wandered through the land. You wouldn't see it unless you painstakingly investigated local death numbers, and such incidents had been going on for years. All the victims had one thing in common: they were either school students or part of the younger generation. The official causes of death, however, were wide and varied. Illness, accidents, or random assaults were blamed. The lack of any clear connection was exactly what prevented the word of the incidents from spreading. It was hard to assert that they were mere coincidences, though. The death rates among that age group are far higher in the prefecture than in the surrounding ones. High enough to be considered an anomaly, even. And that gave Hishia reason enough to suspect that something was afoot. I obviously agreed with her conclusion, of course. So, Miss Tokino would always talk about, like, these tests they were doing, and there was, like, you know, there would be, like, 3 kids or something, and then one of them would go rogue, and they'd have to kill that one, right? I wonder if that's what's going on. They're going around the country, creating HMIs, and then they're having to end up killing a bunch of them in certain areas. Like, the success rate of actually creating an HMI is probably pretty low, right? I think they actually talked about it. Wasn't it like 30% or something? I don't know. There were some numbers thrown around, but I wonder if that's kind of what's going on.
当てずっぽうで言いますが、2065号事件の犯人が事故に見せかけてぶっ殺し続けてるとか言い出されると超マヨにつばなんですけど。
It's entirely possible that this is one of the people that, like, they ascended and they just went crazy and they never ended up catching them. Could be that too. I'm curious to know. We'll have to see how close I am once we get some more information, which I'm assuming will probably happen here soon. Eru had gotten comfortable in Miss Tokino's seat and was booting up her computer. She was excited as a stray cat in front of a ball of yarn, but when she saw the monitor, a frown graced her face.
パスかかって上がります。カッパームカつくです。
よく話してくれたよ。
Ignoring Eru's shenanigans, Taigi said only that and checked the spines of the many files on the bookshelf. This room had a perfectly good computer, but also lots of paper documents. Had Tokino Yomase preferred them? That was a very human feature to have, but it was far too late for it to move my heart. Taigi's left hand grabbed my attention. He was digging through the files with his right while his left was doing something else entirely. It seemed like a particularly pointless act in our situation. Seemingly not even conscious of it, he skillfully bent papers into cranes. He was doing origami. If you ignore the fact that he was doing it with one hand, he was making very plain paper cranes, with the sole defining feature being their tilted necks. I'd once known a girl who used to make cranes with that exact same feature. She always used to smile and say that she loved things with wings.
これでいいだろう。
I snapped out of my nostalgia trip. Taigi walked over to Miss Tokino's desk with a pile of files in his hands. He then made Eru move and sat down in front of the computer.
今起動のパスワードを入力したようだが、時の女子のパスをどうして知っているのかね。
企業秘密だよ。
Everyone wants to say that, huh? He replied casually, still looking at the monitor. Apparently I was surrounded by warped and secretive people.
根性悪ですね、大義は。育ちの良さそうなボンボンのくせに。秘密は皆で仲良く共有するものですよ。
I think it's very funny that Narita is pointing out that everyone around him has secrets when he has some of the biggest secrets of all. Taigi looked at and compared a few files and lists before looking back at me with the expression that seemed to be hiding something.
スクールは全国規模で HMI 候補を発見するための試験を実施している。距離的な近さもあって、奥島近辺では特に重点的に。そこまでは知っているだろう、しんちゃん。
うん。この間の野外試験の時説明を受けたな。
さっきしんちゃんの教えてくれた事件は、どれも該当する地域でスクールが試験を行った後、最長でも2ヶ月以内に起きている。
Taigi handed me one of Miss Tokino's files. It contained research notes, the results of a test targeting potential HMIs across the entire country. I took a seat and looked through them. A single glance was enough to tell me that they'd been going on for quite a while, since at least before the opening of the academy, and this room was actually full of such files. I had no solid basis for feeling that way, but merely looking at the cold labels on the spines made me uncomfortable. Made uncomfortable goosebumps rise all over my skin.
この試験というのは具体的にどういった方法や手順で行われているのかね。
詳しいことは時の先生しか知らない。
It was hard to imagine that they were completely legal, and they had been going on for years throughout Japan without anyone knowing. The funds, personnel, and political power required to perform such feats seemed immense. I already knew that Kurofune and Mikado and the Academy were backed by a giant community that was above the law. That was exactly why, in order to defeat him, I had no choice but to take great risks to infiltrate his paradise. I picked up a different file and looked at the details.
少なくとも死ぬ可能性のある試験らしい。
どういう意味かな。
夜店時野が自分の資料に虚偽を書き込むとは思えないのでね。試験対象になった者のうち毎回数人程度の死者が出ている。記述を信用するなら不適合。
とりあえずバタバタ死んでるみたいですね。
Eru slipped under my arm, sat down on my knees, and started reading the file as well.
重くはないが邪魔になるとは思わないのかね。
プリチピチピチレディを膝の上に乗せてラブラブ。超男のロマンですよね。
Not necessarily, no.
つまりしんちゃんはこう言いたいわけかい。スクールの試験とは場合によっては死に至る危険で非合法なものかもしれないと。
Oh, most definitely. He uttered a low, dull sound at that point. Honestly, I didn't expect him to reveal such a gruesome fact that easily. Had he really not known anything? He reacted as though that was the case, but what if this was all an act? A mere glance at any of the documents in the room would have made anyone reach that conclusion. If he'd known from the start, it meant he'd invited me and Eru over, fully aware of the risk of us discovering the Academy's dark secret. Did he want to save Saku that badly?
この資料を見る限りはだが、ところでエルはこの試験とやらを受けたかね。
いいえ、自分先天性型 HMI で持ち主のところから送られてきたお歳暮ですので。
試験は後天性型 HMI の素養を持つ候補者または ハローを隠して潜伏している HMI の発見を主な目的として実施されていた。実際には前者が大半だったけれど。
それはどういう意味かね。
Taigi smiled as though to imply that the answer was obvious.
先天性型 HMI の場合、ハローを常識として持つゆえに、一般の社会から大きく逸脱してしまう。目立つんだ。発見はそれほど難しくない。
So is he trying to say that there was a lot of people that were hiding these things, and that if they weren't willing to conform, they were finding them and eliminating them? That made sense. If someone had been born with the ability to kill others without even touching them, they wouldn't even see it as a sin or an abnormality. It's impossible for someone or something like that to grow up without clashing with a society based around normality.
だから試験で発見されるのは候補者でなければ何らかのきっかけですでに目覚めていた後天性 HMI がほとんどだ。もっとも後天性型 HMI には先天性型とはまた別の受難がつきまとう。それまで培われた正常な社会常識と突発的に拡張された世界、新しい異常な力との圧力、矛盾の結末はほとんどの場合が悲劇だよ。スライダー化するまでもなく。
I know, what a terrible fate, becoming a burger.
クラウンだ
Only Saku and Soriko are ascended
わ。後
crowns.
天性型
Oh.
HMI。
Sorry, Narita. I know that's your line. I just noticed. Eru, who was listening in on us, suddenly turned away. Apparently she had no intention of commenting.
何か思い出したら言いたまえ。君の意見がサクを救う手がかりになるかもしれない。
卑劣な言い方ですね、成田真理。その程度で自分を寝返らせようとはちゃんちゃらおかしいです。策のためになると分かれば、その時に改めて考えます。
Hey, if you got information, you need to tell me.
君はどこまでも誠実な騎士だな。
当たり前です。自分、策を守るのです。
よくできた道具なら守るというような言葉は使うべきではないよ。もっと無感情にこう言わなければ。従うと。
細かいことをいちいち。器の小さい成田は超うざいです。
Still sitting on my lap, she refused to respond and looked in an uncertain direction with the face of a household cat that just snatched some food. Yeah, that's what my cat does when she snatches food. Human society was narrow-minded. Its lack of tolerance for the abnormal helped maintain order, so I never expected that to change. It was only natural for born HMIs to clash with it and had become the stars of their own tragedy. The only realistic option was to stay abnormal and be rejected, or try to become normal and be destroyed. The Mikados and Takazakis had picked the former, and those who hadn't been crushed by normality. The Academy had gathered and saved those who would have perished otherwise. This paradise had been built on tragedy, but it had indeed brought some salvation to some.
ところで大義、さっき何かに気づいた様子だったが。
気づいたというよりも気がかりだった。これを見てくれるかい？奥島周辺での試験の結果だ。
I was all too familiar with the name on the list he presented. I went onto my device and pulled up the data that Hishia had provided and compared the two. A single look was enough to make the answers clear.
ここ数年続いている事件の死者はすべて試験の被験者。それも良好の判定が出た HMI 適性ありと認められたものばかりだ。
The few exceptions were probably just people who happened to die at those times and placed by chance. If you accounted for minor errors, the tests and incidents looked almost identical.
奥島周辺の試験に限って良好判定の候補者は大半が死亡している。他の地区とは明らかに結果が違う。
One of the favorable subjects on the list was from another area called Mizukura. This was the maiden who was with the guy who threatened me during the practical exam. Obviously those who were confirmed to be HMIs were summoned to the academy and became students. However, 35% of the favorable subjects developed Slider syndrome. They were recorded as such in Miss Tokino's notes. Year, month, day, developed S on month, day, retrieved by Saku, exposed. Year, month, day, developed S on month, day, retrieved by Saku, exposed. Okay, and it says the same thing, so I'm not gonna... Alright, I guess it's day YY and then day ZZ. However, though the subjects from the Okushima area had been sliders at the same rate, most of them went on to die. I copied Hishia's data to Tokino Yomosei's computer and displayed it.
何をするんですか？
ま、見ていたまえ。
I started by accounting for measurement errors, then removed the ones that were marked as unqualified, or in other words, other ones who likely died due to the test. Then I removed those who were disposed of because they developed slider syndrome and...
興味深い結果だね。
The remaining dead all had accident lists as their cause of death. Those students who qualified as potential HMIs happened to die by accident, but only around Okushima. That couldn't have been a coincidence.
揃いも揃って死因が事故というのはおかしい。意図的なものと考えた方が筋が通る。だとすれば、これは誰かが HMI を狙っているということだ。それもスクールの試験で発見された候補者を。
ラノベの読みすぎた。思い込みで意味を後付けしちゃうことは人間にはよくあります。
Hey, that's all we got, okay? And first of all, you're the person who probably reads the most light novels and manga out of everyone here, okay? So, I don't want to hear it from you, Eru.
ミステリー好きなのは認めるよ。けれど、偶然だと言ってしまうには例外なしという結果は無視できない。
それなら、これが2065事件を境にした事件で、誰かが意図的に起こしていて、しかもサクが同じ事件を追っているということは。
I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Saku's route. I think it's going to be so good because there's so much I feel like we're just not being let in on with her. I feel like she's got a whole different like side of her that I'm excited to see. Maybe we'll see it this route. I don't know.
2065事件の犯人が実はまだ奥島に潜伏していて HMI 候補を殺して歩いてるってことですか？
I'm trying to figure out, is the culprit behind Incident 206? Is this like just a rogue person, or is this somebody that the Academy is essentially controlling? Maybe they're like purposely getting rid of people. I don't know.
タイ、他に心当たりはあるかね？
可能性としては AHM のような反 HMI 勢力の仕業。ただし連中にそこまでのことができるかは疑問だ。
同感だ。それにこの異常をあの時の女子が完膚なきまでに見逃していたとは考えがたい。
Honestly, we haven't even seen the AHM really do anything that bad. Like, the most they've done is, like, capture, like, Saku, you know? Or try, like, I don't know. They really haven't done much, as far as I can tell. Like, they've done things that, like, any humans could do.
そうなると、この犯人はスクールの調査と追跡を数年にわたって出し抜きながら、事故に見せかけた HMI 候補者の殺害を続けていることになるね。
そんなことは人間技ではない。人間技どころか HMI としても異常だ。候補の中にはハローに目覚めた者もいただろう。それを一方的に殺して歩くとは。
いわゆるザ・サイコパースってやつですか。一応でも仲間なのにひどい話もあったもんです。
この犯人の一番の異常は行為を現実にしている殺意ではなく、実行を目指す精神のあり方そのものだよ。
何ですか？
玉親見取りを見てもわかるが、エトワール級のハローは強力すぎる。人間を殺害するには過剰だ。人間の機能を停止するのには指先程度の力のハローで十分だ。それはどれだけ強力な HMI であっても、何か一つの間違いがあればたやすく打倒されてしまうという意味だよ。HMI 同士の戦闘は不確定要素が大きい。真っ当な神経の HMI ならそんな予測不能な状況は可能な限り回避しようとするだろう。だがこの犯人はそんな無謀を数年にわたって続けている。
I guess he's trying to ask, like, what would allow this killer to get away with all this stuff? Because their actions would be noticed, and obviously they have been. Like, but how are they getting away with it when fighting another HMI is a big deal? What broken mind made that possible? Another thing to note was the fact that the dead on this list had nothing in common besides being subjects of a test. That meant it was extremely unlikely that there was some other strong motivation behind the killings, like hatred or a grudge. What was driving that monster, then? It didn't seem to have any aversion to death, whether it be its own or another's, yet it was meticulously relentless and systematic. The image of the culprit in my mind felt truly odd.
オンスロート症のことは知ってるかい？
いや、それは。
しんちゃんも知らないか。だろうね。機密化されていて、ここの学生にも伏せられている。HMI の危機的症例は、スライダー、S 型脳機能障害以外にもあるんだよ。成長過程のハローの暴走が原因で、HMI が変質してしまう場合を、オンスロート症という。
具体的にはどういった証拠が現れるのかね。
スライダー症は精神疾患の一種と定義されるが、オンスロート症は身体的疾病、ある意味ではがんのようなものだ。
He started beating around the bush, which made it all the more concerning.
つまり
怪物になるんだ。
So, like the person on the bridge that Saku and Mitori had to stop.
よくわからないが、体に何らかの変化を生じるということかね。
変化ではなく変質さ。ハローが肉体を侵す。結果、正しく人間とは呼べないものになる。オンスロート症が秘匿されているのはそのせいだ。怪物に変わってしまうかもしれない恐怖。
それ自体がオンスロート症の引き金になると。
Gosh, so much like stuff you can develop with HMIs. I think it's like too much for the body to handle.
加えて、外部に漏れれば、AHM のような反 HMI 勢力がますます勢いづくだろう。奴らはまさしく怪物だとね。
だからここで知ったことを口外するなというのかね。それはスクールの理事長の息子としての発言だ。
好きに考えてくれていいよ。
We figured that if Tokino Yomase had discovered the matter, she would have left some documents about it behind, but we found absolutely nothing. Finding something that specific in a sea of documents was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but if we stayed too long we risked attracting unwanted attention, so we concluded that we had nothing left to learn and concluded our investigation. I walked back to my room and Eru followed me into it as if that was only natural. I sat down on a chair while she got comfortable on the cushion she always used to embrace little Kojiro. I found it odd that I'd grown so accustomed to her presence.
さっきの大義の話だが、昔私の父がこう言っていた。タガの外れたものは地下に閉じ込めると。
Young as I'd been, I still didn't understand what he meant. I'd asked him to elaborate, but he simply gave me a tired smile and went silent. Looking back on it, wasn't he talking about victims of onslaught syndrome?
自分の姉に当たるものも始末されましたよ。
Oh. Interesting. I hadn't expected an actual response to my musings. Her voice was light, but the content was heavy.
オンスロート症でか。
自分の家ではコーマとか呼ばれてました。高崎500年も結構中2レベル高めですよね。
Yeah, I could see that happening. Apparently, there were still things I didn't know about HMIs. I had to note, though, Eru Takazaki had been born as a tool, marked as a defect, became property of someone she didn't know, and had a sister who had gotten killed. A decent chunk of her life seemed cruel beyond words. If she truly believed Saku had saved her from that fate, I understood why she was so loyal to her, and that made me want to help them even more.
オンスロート症。知っていることがあるのなら教えてくれないか。
So, onslaught syndrome. Am I safe to assume that the SSDs might have such a thing? Or at least have it in a way that's controlled? Because I feel like they have like supernatural human abilities. and things like that. That sounds like something like where they're losing control and like having their HMIs, I guess, develop beyond limits. Am I getting on the right track? Maybe, maybe not. Something to do with that.
自分が知ってるのはせいぜい口伝の一部ですからね。大義のボンボンの説明と内容は変わりませんが、高崎では一種の先祖返りとも言われていました。
怪物のようになることが先祖返りだと。
コーマ、要は
Oh gosh, that's scary.
HMI のことですが、普通の HMI よりもずっと強い能力を持ちます。そちらの方こそ HMI としてはあるべき形なのだと。先天性 HMI の家系としてのご多分に漏れず、高崎は自分たちのことを魔の血を引くものであると定義づけていました。代を重ね、いやおうなく人に混じるほど血は薄れ、力は失われてゆく。実際、最新作のエロなんかは不良品だったわけ。高崎は最初からいつか来る終わりを見据えていた。だからこそ、なんとか本来あるべき正しい形、最初の位置に戻ろうとして歳月を費やした。それが待ち望まれていたコーマです。エルやエルの姉にあたるものも、要するにそのためのプロトタイプなわけですね。
待ち望んでいたのに始末したのは予定外の不都合があったから。
ぶっちゃけどうにもならなかったんですよ。完全無欠に人間ではなく、人の手に負えないからこそ魔と呼ぶのです。
Right, and Eru's talking about this so casually.
いざ現れたコーマ、エルの姉にあたる者は花から人間なんて眼中になく、人知の及ばない魔であるがゆえに、どんな制御も受け付けない正真正銘の怪物でした。そりゃもう殺されまくりました。超ジェノサイドです。身内や系類まで寄ってたかっての総がかりで姉的なものを始末した時には、高崎の生き残りはこれっぽっち。
She opened and raised her right hand. Did that mean only 5 made it? I couldn't say for sure, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the fact that the Takazakis were as good as done, and Eru Takazaki was the last product created by their 500 years of research.
まあ、自分、持ち主のところで道具やってたので巻き込まれなかったんですけどね。
想像以上だな。
I'd imagine that monster meant onslaught syndrome made them act like sliders, leaving them unable to control their emotions or desires, but it seemed far worse.
それでは本物の怪物だ。もはや人間とは呼べない。
でも、それがあるべき形だとすると、自分たちも人間と呼べないのかも。
Eru closed her mouth as though to conclude this conversation. I couldn't help but feel that I made her speak about something she wished to avoid, despite how nonchalant she looked.
ありがとう。そして、すまない。辛い記憶を思い出させてしまった。
ほ
Eru opened her mouth and stared at me for a moment. Then after a decent amount of time, she started talking again.
それは、フォローどうも。
After saying those simple words, she looked away. After that, she sat behind me with her back turned to me. Sitting like that back to back made me realize how much larger my back was than hers, as well as how tiny she was overall.
話は終わりです。疲れましたので、あとは成田が整理してください。
I didn't intend to ask her to speak more, but that was probably her way of asserting that she wouldn't talk no matter what. Regardless, I knew I had to confront Saku the next day. We had to discuss what I'd learned. Eru made no effort to return to her room. Despite that, she also didn't try to touch my computer or mess with the bookshelves.
何か部屋に帰れない、帰りたくない理由でもあるのか?
Probably like, it's uncomfortable in there, or it's boring.
いえ、
そろそろ風呂を使って眠ろうと思っているのだが。
How troublesome. It was already past 1 in the morning.
サクと出会ったのは君にとって幸せだったかね。
I asked her that question as I looked at the digital clock.
幸せですか？道具が幸せを持ったりしますか？
物も長く使っていれば魂を得る。この国にはそんな話があったはずだよ。
I don't know, like, would Pinocchio count? I feel like Pinocchio, who was an actual boy, eventually becomes a real boy. You could argue, you know, that's him, like, gaining a soul.
まあ、持ち主が現れてよかった。
どんな形にせよ、それを幸だと捉えているのなら、この学園に感謝しておくといいだろう。
It's very interesting how the academy is this, like, probably very twisted place in actuality, but for a lot of people here, it's, like, actually, like, something that kind of saves them in a way. Very conflicting. After she heard my words, Eru tilted her head and thought like an owl.
昼間も見た通り、このスクールはやばいところですよ。試験で何人も死んでるし、この分だと裏がどんな超クズいか知れたものじゃないと思います。
それでもだ。エル、君が自分で言っていただろう。道具だったから巻き込まれて死なずに済んだ。生きてこの学園に来たからサクと出会えた。
死んだだか殺されただかした連中は生きてるエルたちを恨んでるでしょうね。
道具の君が他人の納得を気にするのかね。ああ、そうだ。君は正しい。憎悪とは死者の正当な権利。そしてそれを笑って踏みにじるのが聖者の特権だ。
I wonder if this route can end with us, like, convincing Eru that she's, like, a normal human being, just like everyone else, and that she deserves happiness. And then that's going to be the end.
さまつな恨みなど君には知ったことではない。そうだろ。たとえこの学園が屍の山の上に築かれた頂上だとしても、謳歌するのに後ろめたさを抱いてどうする。悔いとは突き詰めれば自分への言い訳だ。これだけ責めているから許してくださいと、そんなざれ言を幾万積み上げて物の足しにしようとは、それこそ笑いが止まらない。
何言っているんですか。詭弁がましい。鼻血出そうな綺麗事です。
君はこの場所での幸を得た後だ。死を糧になった果実はとっくに積まれてしまった。手放してしまえばそれこそ何一つ残らない。そこに悪があると思うなら胸を張って怒り嘆けばいい。それこそが正しく死者に報いることではないかね。
それって極論するとやったもの勝ちってことでしょ。終わってしまったことに取り返しはつかないんだから全部忘れてしまおうぜなんて。
I mean, yeah, things have happened in the past. It's not like you can change it, right? But you can do something about it so you make sure it doesn't happen again.
そんなので死んだやつは納得しませんよ。
Because it's just like in history, you know, history is doomed to repeat itself, right? I mean, that's kind of why we study it, to make sure it doesn't. Because if you don't know about the past, you can't make sure that you don't repeat it.
まったくだな。
ん？
人の世というやつには罪はあっても罰はないのだよ。力ある者は何をしても許される。簒奪と蹂躙の限りを尽くした者ほど幸せな一生を送るのが真理なのだから。それこそ神にすがり、罪には罰がついて回るのだと夜ごとに言って聞かせなければ、社会という形を維持することさえできなくなるほどにね。
There was no punishment in this purgatory. That was why I planned to punish the traitors myself as a dead man who was with the right to do so.
どうしていきなりそんなこと言うんですか？
人には己の幸せを守る権利がある。それがどれほど罪深い幸であったとしても。だからエル、君は迷うことなく自分にとって一番幸せである道を選びたまえ。
This sounds vaguely familiar to some other things he said in the past.
道具の自分に幸せなんてわかると思ってるんですか？
君はやはり人間だよ、高崎エル。 人格とは外部からの刺激に対しての反応を決定するシステムのことだ。こうして私とやり取りのできる L には人格というものがあるはずだろ。
PC だって電源入れれば動くじゃないですか。だからって PC を人間と言いますか？自分、ここへ来た頃はもっとピクスドール系なキャラでした。要するに、ものだったのです。サクがいろいろなもの見せたり読ませたりするようにしました。
以前買い物をしていたあれかね。
サブカルチャーすごい。ジャパニーズ文化の頂点。勉強して今のキャラを作ってるのです。本物じゃなくて偽物です。みたいなものってだけですよ。
So she's saying her personality is essentially created from the subculture of Japanese society, right? So she created this character. It's not real, it's fake. I just seem like the real thing. So she's saying this is just like a culmination of other people's characters, and that's what her personality is. Is that kind of what she's implying?
偽物が偽物でしかないとは、君は強量なのだね。
I mean, because I would argue, like, every person on Earth probably that interacts with other people is probably getting part of their personality from other people. I mean, I've definitely changed how I act sometimes based on how other people have acted before. I see, hey, I like how they do that, so I try to change my personality to match that. And that helps me, in my eyes, to improve as a person, right? So I feel like it's not weird that your personality would be a culmination of other people's. I don't think that's too bad of a thing. I mean, it just depends on who you're idolizing. Because I mean, whoever you're looking up to and taking information from, whoever you respect, right? That's who you're probably getting some of your personality from. You're trying to emulate them because you want to be like them. So to say that your personality is a combination of other personalities, I don't think is a strange thing. I don't think that makes you an object. That just shows that you're learning. I mean, because just look at like kids, right? Like kids, that's how they gain a lot of their skills. It's how they gain a lot of their traits, is looking at other people, like their parents or their friends. That's how they're learning from others, and that's how they're becoming more of an individual themselves, because when you take a little bit from here and you take a little bit from there, now you're different than both of those people, right? You have something that neither of those people have, because you have essentially two different sources of information and knowledge.
偽物が本物になるんですか?
I mean, I think so.
偽物は偽物だ。しかし、見ようによっては本物になる瞬間もあるだろう。
I mean, isn't that where the saying "fake it till you make it" comes from?
この世界にはただ一つの真実のような都合のいいものはないのだから。誰かの悪が誰かの幸であるようにね。
I'll partially agree with that, sure.
例えば、君が水槽に浮かぶ脳髄で世界のすべてが一夜の夢だとしても、君にとっては偽りではない本物だ。
よくわかりません。
Yeah, I'm with you, Eru.
サクや他のクラウンたち、彼女らと一緒に君が過ごしてきた時間は嘘ではないと言っているのだよ。
Yeah,
高
that's
崎
true.
エル。私たちにとって君は本物だ。間違いなく。願わくば君自身にとってもそうであることを祈っているよ。
She'd spent most of the exchange looking around the room with a bored expression, but she suddenly turned to me after I said that. She then licked her lips.
一緒に寝ましょう。成田。
いきなり何を?
She got on all fours and approached me like a panther mid-hunt.
一緒に寝るだけです。それとも何か違うことを考えましたか?
This is a very random shift, but okay.
いや、それは。しかし、この間のことは君にとって取引だったのでは。今度は何のつもりだ?
I don't know why, but I tried to reject her, going against my heart's desires.
もう一度言うが、私は助けを願う者に対価を要求したりは。
As I spoke, Eru placed her finger on my lips and stopped me mid-speech.
今度のは簡単です。自分、成田とくっつきたくなったんです。
I don't know, I feel like that's a very human emotion.
自分を本物だと思ってるなら、こういうのもありじゃないですか。一番幸せになる道をなんだらとか、さっき言ってましたよね。
Alright, I'll allow it this time.
今のエルは私に好意を抱いていると？
そう言ってます。成田は自分にいろいろ気を使ってくれましたよね。成田はエルが嫌いですか？
A wave washed through my heart. My urges suddenly mixed with a desire to touch her. I wished to embrace Eru's tiny body. Had I been corrupted? The very thought went against my greatest beliefs and convictions, yet my heart urged me onward. I couldn't tell if this was favor or desire. It may have been something that couldn't be so easily classified.
私は君のどこに惹かれたのだろう。
それはめちゃくちゃにしてやるぜ、おへいへという意味ですか？残念ですが、そういう展開は期待しないでください。
I don't think that was what we were implying, but okay.
もう少しロマンのある和訳を頼も
う。Yeah.
人を好きになるのに理由はいらないそうです。言うなれば、ピチピチヤングで超凛々しい自分の活躍っぷりを見ていた成田がいつの間にかドハマりしたのです。
Yeah, totally. That was exactly what I was thinking.
自分はものなので、成田は言うなれば人形フェチですね。あ、でも成田はエルを本物だというので、人形に魂を認めるフィギュア萌え派かもしれません。
Gosh, Eru, I think you're putting a little too much thought into this one.
ジャパニーズカルチャーとは奥深いものなのだね。
Indeed it is.
いいとも。私にも拒む理由はなくなってしまった。
してくれますか？それはどうも。どうです？自分の体、寸胴ぺたんこの特定思考向けボディですが。
とても魅力的だ、エル。私は何か目覚めてはいけないものに目覚めてしまったのかもしれない。
ふっふっふ、それは結構です。成田もいよいよ二次元スキーの門を叩きましたね。今夜は新世界とともにエルの肉体を味わってください。
これが二次元の世界なのか。
2D. Is that just because she's flat? Was it actually the work of her halo? I didn't know what caused this sensation, but I soon stopped caring. Looking out for her like that made me remember the distant past, though it was neither the time nor the place for that.
やれ。どうやら本格的におかしなものに目覚めてしまったのかもしれない。
そうでしょう。素直になってモラルなんて全部捨ててしまえばいいのです。
I don't know if that's a good idea.
モラルはともかく、理性は必要だと思うのだが、理性を失えば人間は獣も同然なのだから。とはいえ、感情を押しとどめるのは非常に難しいものだね。
Yeah, we haven't had 500 years of training in our family for that.
自分が成田のモラルなど壊してあげます。
Whoa, kinky. She formed a smile and brought her body closer. Merely seeing her approach created a surge of joy within me that I would have never expected. When had this sense of attraction started? Was it love? Or perhaps it was a remnant of the distant past I'd subconsciously craved. Regardless, I felt immense joy, so it didn't matter whether it was real or fake. I decided to simply let it take me.
成田は大事なことを失念しています。世にすでに存在する放漫ばかりを求め、未来の放漫を捨ておいています。
Yes. It's like stocks. You're investing for the future.
それはどういうこと
だ？どんな放漫であっても最初は平坦なのです。つまり平坦こそ希望 それをただ平坦だからと切り捨てる成田に真の放慢は微笑まない。
You know, as odd as this dialogue is, I think this is actually speaking to him.
放慢への信仰が嘘偽りないのであれば、今この瞬間平坦であったとしても、私は必ずや君を放慢へと導こうくらい言ったらどうなのです。
I was overcome by a shock akin to being chained by my neck to a speeding horse. She made me realize just how much of a fool I was. Humans were creatures that experienced growth, but the rate was different for each individual. It is greatly influenced by the environment in which they grew up. That was why I had to lead the flat ones to a shining future where they were busty. I can't not laugh reading that.
そうだ。未来ある平坦を自らが導けば、世界はもっと美しくなる。
I feel like he's now truly realizing the sentiment behind flat is justice.
こうしてはいられない。
I pushed Eru away and stood up.
板前、平坦たちよ。今私が君たちを救いに行く。
Oh my gosh. That's what he got out of this. You know, I shouldn't have expected anything better. Not wasting time sleeping, I headed outside.
成田、待って、待つのです。成田
He's just gone. I heard Eru's voice behind me, but at this point it was noise, not unlike the rustling of the leaves outside.
ロリコニアが危ない。かくなる上は。
Feeling a presence behind me, I looked back. Like before, I had failed to notice Eru approach me. But by the time I saw her, it was too late. A heavy blow was delivered to my head. I was defeated before arriving at the true future the flat ones carried. I knew that there were brethren out there who would carry on the torch. I was somehow able to wholeheartedly believe that. Having discovered the truth of the world, I went to sleep in satisfaction. The martial drowsiness welcomed me. Narita, you're so dumb.
あとは成田の記憶が巻き戻ってくれることを祈るのみです。
Her plan, like, totally backfired on her. So funny. The Etoile dorm was away from the school building, but it wasn't all that far. However, walking the distance felt particularly hard that morning.
それでですね、思いっきり煽ってやったんですよ。木金中、かまぼこいたかよ。ポコポコ、すぐ黒ずむって。
Oh, mega lol. She said it again.
ふむ。
どう考えても時代は鉄筋。必殺技みたいな名前がかっこいいグロッケンシュピール。木金とは格の違いが現れてますね。
I don't know, Eru. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know nothing, absolutely nothing about instruments, okay? So I have no idea what you're talking about. It was Eru's fault. Since last night, she wouldn't let go of me. We even went to the shower together, so controlling myself proved rather difficult. Albeit only slightly, there was a hint of caution in her behavior. It might have had something to do with the fact that the memories of last night aren't complete. It was hard for me to move as we were. Oh, I felt extremely hot, too. The worst thing about it, though, was I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, Eru is kind of a weird, quirky person, but it's not like you can really hate her. The students passing by looked at us like a father and daughter playing at the park. Well, that's kind of weird. That's a little bit weird. But some of them glared daggers as though to say, a beast like you should just die. As Eru clung to me, I patted her head, enjoying the softness. The chime signaling the start of our lectures rang out. We do have a very odd relationship, I'll say that. It was the first lecture. Mr. Shishikai entered the room and did something on the educational layer to present new AR information on our RI. The advanced lesson was no different from the usual, but there was an invisible cloud hanging above us. Eru had sat down to my right. I looked to the left and felt my brow furrow. Saku wasn't there. The lack of the insignia, who never missed lectures, created ripples throughout the classroom. Everyone looked at each other in confusion.
講義の前に皆さんに報告することがあります。
Another abnormality. Those words caused a stir.
何かあったのか。
Mr. Shishikai didn't seem like his usual self. He wasn't wearing the fake smile I knew him for. It almost seemed like he was trying to hide his fear. His face remained expressionless, yet he was mired with tension. An ominous feeling overwhelmed me. Shouldn't Narita knew that there was no point in praying to anyone at a time like that.
昨夜、スクールの学生1名が亡くなりました。
If you say Saku, I'm ending this game right now. I heard Eru gasp. They gathered the students in a gymnasium to explain the events of the previous night. I looked at my fellow Etoilas. Tamao and Taigi were there, while Soroko was still hospitalized. Oh yeah, that's where she is. Only one was actually missing. Saku. Eru's face had paled. She clung to my left arm tightly. I'd never seen her so emotional before.
犯人を追っていて途中で
それほど不用意ではないよ。まだ何も分かっていないのだ。過剰に不安になることはない。
I gently touched her as I waited to hear more details.
すでに通達は言っているだろうと思う。昨夜、栄誉ある本校学生1名が不測の事態で失われた。
Well, Frank, you know it's serious when Kurofune's here.
死亡したのは鍵石義雄。スクールの学生諸君、同胞の死に黙祷を捧げよう。
Yoshio Kagashi. That name sounds familiar. Was that the one that hung with... So there was that girl, right? Was that one of the guys that hung with her? After his heavy voice echoed through the gymnasium, a girl a few rows ahead of us collapsed in shock. The students started making a ruckus while the teachers ran up to her, disturbing the moment of
あれ
silence.
は確か。
I recalled that the collapsed maiden's name was Mizukura, meaning the one who had died was a person she knew, the guy who'd picked a fight with me.
策じゃなかった
And then Eru's just like, oh, thank goodness it wasn't her. Eru's mutter conveyed relief. I did feel bad for him, but we were indeed glad that it wasn't Saku.
鍵石君は学園内で亡くなりました。死因は急性の心不全と思われます。明日学葬を行いますので全員参加するように。
Mr. Shishikai replaced Kurofune and told us to disperse. Heart failure, That seemed like a cover-up to me. They were probably trying to protect the minds of all the sensitive HMIs. My eyes met Eru's. I didn't see anything in her expression, but I knew what she wanted to say. After closing our eyes one last time and paying respects, we left the gymnasium. I wonder if Saku's looking into what actually
どうか
happened.
したのですか
別にどうということもないと思う。朝から何とも陰惨な話だと思っただけだよ。
Apparently she noticed the look of worry on my face.
成田様高崎様お待ちください
Oh, one of Taigi's maids? Okay. We were called to a stop by one of Taigi's maids. It's rare that one of the maids talks to us.
お連れしました
The chairman's office. Kurofune Mikado sat behind the mahogany desk, silently observing a picture on the wall. Slowly but surely, he turned to face me. The picture, by the way, appeared to be a copy of the Pioneer plaque. The originals were carried with the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft launched in the years 1972 and 1973, respectively. The plaque contained drawings of man's form as well as a map leading to Earth, meant to be found by extraterrestrial life. It represented an unfulfilled dream.
よく来た諸君。
Kurofune looked back at us. Like before, he welcomed us with confidence and certainty. Big shots like him generally refused to meet their guests' eyes as they got comfortable on a sofa, and he gave us a polite bow instead. The man had no need to show off.
おとなし作は不在か。
Oh, and frick, Tamao's here. We haven't seen her in a while. She seems like she's always doing something. Tamao and Taigi were already there, with Eru and myself joining only two Etoiles were missing, Soriko, who was hospitalized, and Saku.
サクは今日は病欠なのです。
いいだろ
Kurofune ignored Eru's awkward excuse and started talking.
う。先ほどの件についてだ。鍵石義雄は死因を心不全と発表したが、実際にはそうではない。
なるほど。時の先生も不在の今は可能な限り心理的安定を保つのが必須ですからね。
鍵石義雄は何者かに殺害された。
それで
本題に入る。
I urged him to hurry up, and he quickly did so without expressing even a hint of displeasure. Only Tamao seemed shocked by my actions. Eru was Eru, but even Taigi didn't look surprised.
彼が殺害されたのは奥島の市内だ。
外出許可取ってたってことか。一体何しに出て行ったんだ。
申請によれば身内の式典に出席するためとある。
Interesting, so they lied about where he died too.
その彼は奥島の出身だったのかね。
稲田。
じゃあなんで奥島にいたんだよ。飛行機待っててやられたとかか。
詳細は現在調査中だ。必要な資料ができ次第引き渡す。諸君も知る通り、天川ノーブルスクールは HMI が集められた学園だ。
No, I had absolutely no idea. I just was here and I was wondering what y'all were talking about.
鍵石義雄も高グレードのヒストリス HMI だ。これは単なる異常者の犯行ではない。
Histories? What does that mean?
犯人も HMI ということか。
Probably.
あるいは
He half agreed with my assumption. He knew well that HMIs weren't the only ones who could kill
状
HMIs.
況的に見て犯人が HMI である可能性は高い。何者かがスクールに敵対している。諸君らの同胞が狙われている。
What a horrible person. I couldn't believe someone out there would be willing to do that. It's not like there's somebody in this room who would do something like that. Absolutely awful. Instead of continuing his speech, he prioritized my question. It was a smooth exchange, but I felt he'd read my thoughts, which upset me.
草芝耐え。
消息不明中のスライダーですか？
犯人が HMI だとして現時点でスクールの管理下にない者は当然有力な容疑者だろうね。
Sliders were intelligent, but their lack of control made them act very spontaneously. If she'd managed to hide without causing any disturbances, Kusashiba was quite an exception.
事件は内々に処理しなければならない。HMI とは可能性だ。ノーブルたるものの種だ。大衆はそれを理解できない。事態が拡大し、ことが公になれば、HMI を現状以上に危険視する。断じて食い止めなければならない。ノーブルとは、人類の最先端だ。君臨するものではない。先頭に立つものだ。自ら率先して危険に立ち向かい、打倒する意志と力あるものだ。
つまり我々に犯人狩りをせよと。
そうだ。諸君らだけではない。スクールの学生は残らず動員される。
They're using everybody, not just like the top dogs.
だが、彼らの力は未完成だ。これ以上の犠牲は出せない。事態収拾までの間、エトワールには出席義務の解除と無制限の外出許可を与える。
Oh, frick. Okay, that's kind of a big deal.
ノーブル足らんとする者らよ。自らの手で自らの敵を打ち破れ。
As we started filing out of the office,
成田真理、話がある。
Kurofune Mikado told me to stay. Tamao looked at me in an attempt to ask what I'd done, but I was clueless as her. Actually, I'd performed several heinous acts, but Shinri Narita's true identity should have still remained a mystery. Or had I actually made a fatal error without even noticing? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot he could talk to us about. Eru and the others walked out, leaving behind an air of puzzlement and worry. Only Kurofune and I stayed in the office. The air in it felt heavy to begin with, but having to face them all alone made it at least 10 times worse. I almost had trouble breathing. Repulsing the invisible, transparent pressure emitted by his presence, I strained my whole body like a fully drawn bowstring. If this was the moment my vengeance came to an end, I was ready for it. My very life was meant for that alone.
スクールでの生活には慣れたか。
ここでは常に新たな発見がある。そしてやるべきことも。心躍る場所だ。
The idle chatter didn't seem to fit the stoic man before me, but it granted me the precious time I needed to prepare. I continued to gather my strength, not letting even a single part of it leak. It felt like I was running while still. When the moment came, I would be able to run at top
ま
speed.
だクラウンに加わるのを拒んでいるそうだな。
私には他にやるべきことがある。そしてこのスクールのやり方に賛同はできない。クラウンに加わる理由も道理もありはすまい。
この場でよくぞ言ってのける。
Yeah, that is kind of ballsy to say to the guy that like holds these really powerful ideals. Like, hey, yeah, I don't really agree with them.
しかし、ふてぶてしいほどの面構え。
どういう意味だ。世間話をするために時間を取ったのかね、理事長殿。
I knew that wasn't the case, but then why did my accursed enemy intend? I couldn't read him. What had he made? What had he made me stay? Why had he made me stay behind? I don't know why I'm having such trouble reading that.
私は頂点を手に入れる。この世界を正すためにだ。
なんだ。
His words were so sudden that I didn't know how to react.
成田真理。この世界が正しいとお前は断言できるか。あまたな不条理と理不尽と不理解。数えきれない悲劇。すべてはあまりに不完全だ。
その不完全さこそ世界の正しさなのだろう。
私はそれを変えてみせる。道のりは長く険しい。夜店時野の死で大きな交代を余儀なくされ、成田真理。現時点ではただ一人の男性エトワール級 HMI。
Wait, hold up. What about Taigi?
私の理想を理解しろ。
So he's trying to convince us to be on his side, essentially. Interesting. I was truly at a loss for words. He told Shinri Narita of all people to understand Kurofune Mikado.
到達するためにはまだまだ多くのものが必要だ。お前には私と共に歩むに足る力が、資質がある。共に正しき未来を目指せ。
You know, it's kind of funny that he's spouting all these illogical irregularities stuff, and then he's asking the only guy in the group of Atolas. He's pretty much saying only me, because I'm a guy, is capable of walking alongside him. A little sexist, don't you think?
正しき未来。そのために頂点を手に入れると。
I feel like he's implying that a girl can't reach the top. She can be high up, but she can't be at the top like him. Interesting. I barely managed to eke out those words. It felt like my throat had frozen over. My serene mind burned with rage and dizziness. One thing seemed rather evident, however.
そうだ
He replied plainly. What I felt when I gazed at his arrogant figure wasn't fear, but hate and rage. No matter how beautiful his ideals were, they were clashed with the rage boiling within me. That was more evident than ever in that moment.
世界を征服しようとでも言うのか随分と時代遅れなことだな
最後の1を超えて新たな1が未来を創造する
何の話だ
いずれわかる
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I would love to see a route where, like, Shinu Narita, like, actually, like, ends up going along with Kurofune Mikado. Obviously, like, story-wise, that wouldn't work. But I feel like that'd be cool to see, like, how much stuff they could do if they worked together. Instead of, you know, him trying to kill Kurofune.
今はわからなくともお前は必ず私の理想を理解するその時には正しい判断を下せ
I don't know about that.
必ずか
今日のところはそれだけだ
Oh, something was certain, and Kurofune would know it soon enough. He would know that Shinu Narita was an avenger who fulfilled his oath of vengeance at all costs. Very interesting conversation. Never had anything like that with him before.
食われたかと思ってたけど、生きてやがるみたいだな。
As I left the chairman's office, I found the other Etoilas. They waited for me, apparently.
ああどうやら鬼の口には合わなかったようでね
Funny. We traveled to the cafeteria to discuss the murder. Everyone had complex expressions on their faces.
今回の事件は AHM が後ろで糸を引いている可能性もあるね
It was very like him to point that out. He wasn't serious about that assumption, but he still considered it a possibility, which was the right course of action.
例えば草芝田への逃走を手助けして騒ぎを起こさせ HMI の怪物性を公表するといったところかな
That would certainly benefit their cause, that's true.
めんどくせえやり口だな。
I'm glad Tamao is finally helping us. I feel like she would actually be pretty useful here.
AHM のメンバーに HMI はいるのだろうか
AHM はハローを憎んでる連中です。そんなところに HMI が加わっているなんて。
連中がある種の実験をしているという噂はあったよ
横から突っ込み、そのところは
I'm sorry, that was funny.
HMI を制御するための実験さ最もポピュラーなのは薬物や手術を用いたマインドコントロールそのためにさらわれる HMI もいるらしい
マジですか。
そういえば、この間事件があったな。
東京のやつだね
They spoke of the murder of a family that occurred only about 2 weeks prior. Some maniac welcomed himself into the house and slaughtered the parents while the child's whereabouts remained unknown. It was officially classified as a violent burglary, but the child was an HMI who'd recently ascended. The academy didn't have the child under their wing because the parents had been hiding his HMI status. They were normal people and probably feared what would happen if their child's extraordinary abilities were exposed. Due to that, the academy was unable to retrieve the child and tragedy struck. The fact that even the non-HMI parents were killed made it look like an AHM lynching. Or perhaps Taigi was right and their object was to kidnap the HMI.
AHM といっても個々のメンバーを駆動している動機は様々だろう
異端への恐怖あるいは敵あるいは差別
Or perhaps hatred. The incident in Tokyo seemed truly vile, which made me believe that there was something far more intense behind it than mere rejection of the abnormal. HMIs that made their way to the academy were not all oppressed. HMIs, myself included, were usurpers. or usurpers, that had extraordinary powers. Their abnormal abilities, which couldn't be restrained by society, threatened to destroy the world around them, and as such they had caused countless tragedies as well. The land beyond the Academy's tall walls was a bloody wasteland, covered in the curses of the dead and the hatred of the living. Numerous individuals swore eternal hatred for Kurofune Mikado, the Academy, and the students under his wing because they couldn't tolerate the fact that they'd been granted any bliss. In a way, they even had a lot in common with Shinri Narita.
マジめんどくせえよ。HM だか逃げたスライダーだか知らねえけど、捕まえて締めりゃいいんだろ。
Tamao's motivated words brought me back to reality.
ヤンキー、マジ単純思考です。
うっせえよ。とにかくせっかくの自由行動だ。俺はしばらく一人で動く。そっちの方が面倒じゃねえしな。
さっきはああ言ったが、相手はおそらく AHM じゃない。強力な HMI だ。
Yeah, I'm thinking that's more likely.
俺が負けるってのか？なめてんのか？叫んなよ。雑魚にやられてクラウンのメンバーが務まるか？
信用はしているよ。だけど勇気と無謀は別だ。気をつけなければね。いついかなる時も。
任せとけ。お前らこそドジ踏むなよ。じゃあな。
Tamao walked off by herself before suddenly turning around and heading right back.
エル、サクのこと頼んだからな。
We're freaking trying.
自分、言わなくても頼まれています。
No idea what's going on with her. It seemed that she had forgotten something. With a final satisfied Tamao left the cafeteria for good.
僕たちはどうするかな。
また手を借りたい。夜店時野の残した資料を洗う。
It's not a terrible idea. There was no telling how we were being monitored, and so I chose my words carefully and kept the exchange to a minimum.
時野先生の資料から手がかりを探すのか。難しくはないのかい？
Taigi seemed to read my mind and also limit his words.
切り札になりそうなものは他にないのでね。
We had no luck yesterday, but I knew we couldn't leave the issue to anyone
それに
else.
スクールの全学生が動員されると決まった。人数がいれば外のチェックは速やかに終わるだろう。そちらは任せておけばいい。
成田、
Eru looked up at me with a blank face. Thanks to the time we'd spent together, I more or less knew what she wanted to say.
大丈夫だ。すぐに見つかる。
そうですね。
She nodded in understanding.
では、僕らも行くとしようか。
Yes, she would surely return soon.
外、覗いてください。
Eru pointed at the inner garden. She rarely ever raised her voice, so that was most intriguing. Curious, I checked to see what had captured her attention.
あれは。
だから何度も言ってるでしょ。風邪ひいてたの。38度はあった。天井回転してた。部屋出ようと思ったら倒れて、今起きたところよ。
Dang, that's pretty high.
私が言うことではないが、連絡くらい入れればよかったのではないかね。
電話持つのも無理だったの。針が重いくらいだった。
寮を出るときに部屋を訪ねても反応がなかったのは？
返答できないぐらい大変だったのよ。
We found Saku out in the inner garden. It was almost noon, but she was heading out to our lectures as though it was only natural.
やかましい男どもです。サクが言うことは正義なのです。
Ah, yes, Saku's word is law. Before I knew it, Eru was standing next to Saku, all smiles.
驚いたでしょ。
全くだ。
Eru looked extremely happy, and that made sense since her appearance had made it clear that Saku hadn't been the victim of some dangerous incident.
どうにか動けるようになって、慌てて校舎まで出てきたら、誰もいなくてさらに大慌てよ。告知用のレイヤーに何があったのか情報公開されてたし、市市会教諭から連絡用のメールも来てたから、おおよその事情は分かってる。
さすがは筆頭殿。 頼もしいことだね。
ところで玉緒はもしかするとまた単独行動？スクール始まって以来の騒ぎだって時に相変わらずなんだから困った子だわ。
むしろ玉緒らしくて良いと思うよ。人はそれぞれ自分に合った行いをなすべきだ。
それよりもサク、君はどうするつもりかな？
もちろんスクールを守るためにするべきことをします。私はこのスクールの法と正義の担い手、クラウンのインシグニアですから。
She proudly puffed out her chest as she said that. Saku Otonashi seemed the same as ever, only looking forward at all times.
でもサク、体はもう大丈夫なんですか？
Yeah, fam, if I had a fever like that, I'd be out for days.
状況が状況なんだから休んでなんていられないわ。
いや、今日のところは休養が君の仕事だ。音無サクはクラウンとしてだけではなく、このスクールの要。事態を収められるのはおそらく君だけだ。いざという時に倒れられるのは困る。
I think you're right, Taigi.
私はもう。
私も大義に賛成しよう。
唐突に何を言ってるんですかね、この変質者は。
Hey, you be nice to me. You've been spending so much time with me, and then suddenly, as soon as Saku's around, you're against me, huh?
冤罪には断固異を唱えるが、それとは別に、サクが要であることは大義が言った通りだ。万全でなければならない。
二次元スキー。
Where the frick did that come from?
実際、今朝の君は倒れてしまった。
それは。
無茶をする必要はないと言っているのだよ。すでにスクールの学生全員が動員されている。今この場で君が先頭に立たなくても事態は動く。必要なのはなすべき時になすべきを果たすこと。休息し次に備えるのが今の君の仕事だ。
Yeah, I think she just kind of overworked herself is what happened.
目を丸くしているね。折れ直したのかね。
Have you fallen off for me all over again?
ぶっちゃけ驚いています。
But
成田もたまにはまともなこと言うんだなと。
What do you mean? I say reasonable stuff all the time. Maybe you're just not paying attention.
いや、全く。
And Taigi, you're betraying me.
同感だわ。
Oh my gosh. They were all so impressed that they even sighed in unison. What an unreasonable bunch. Yeah, a bunch of pricks.
たまには余計だ。私は常日頃からまっとうなことしか口に出していないのだから。
Okay, Narita, you're selling yourself a little too good there. Most of the time, I will give it to you. Most of the time, you actually make some sense.
でも、そうね。わかった。悔しいけど、今日のところは寮でおとなしくしています。何かわかったらすぐに知らせて。
もちろんそうします。
ところで、妙に成田と仲がいいんだけど、何かあったの？
Yeah, because you haven't been around, you frick. Maybe you would have noticed us getting close, huh?
ラブラブです。成田がお前の平坦な胸とくびれてない腰がたまらんのや。と列状を催したので。
That's not quite correct. Just ever so slightly you're off.
ほ
う。Taigi. Freaking Taigi's just like, oh. And then Saku's like, oh.
よし、成田を埋めよう。大丈夫よ。痛いかもしれないけど、ほんの一瞬だから。
Dang, Saku's literally already trying to kill me.
いや、少し待ってくれたまえ。
It's like, hold up, we can talk about this.
やった言い訳するんですね。ひどい、エロい、下手で。
Eru, I thought you liked me. What the frick?
無論言い訳などしない。しかし、合意の上であることをサクに説明しなければならないのだよ。
Alright, this is true. This is a fact. Dang, Saku's going tsundere. Or, excuse me, yandere. As for what happened next, well, I prefer to avoid commenting on the fact that calming down Saku involved sacrificing 480,500 yen's worth of the Academy's equipment. That's an oddly specific number. The search for documents that we weren't even sure existed was slow and tedious. After accompanying Saku back to the dorm, we resumed checking Tokino Yomasei's room, but we still hadn't found anything noteworthy. In fact, we didn't even know if she had said documents, as was common for geniuses. Miss Tokino didn't care about anyone else's understanding of her methodology.
どうしたのです？アホ丸出しの顔をして。
What do you mean? This is just my normal face.
私も天才であるがゆえの共感と憂慮にふけっていたのだよ。
特別サービスできちん的たわごとは聞き流してあげます。
Wait, what was censored there? What? The current search involved all of the Academy students. That meant 200 HMIs and 200 Halos. A proper visualization of their combined power would have been quite an impressive light show. Would the culprit really be able to hide with so many HMIs after then? I think it's supposed to be after them. Rationally, the answer was no. However, we were dealing with someone who had eluded Tokino Yomasei for years, and so logic did not apply. I had no evidence, but I was absolutely certain that the prior night's murder and incident 206 were somehow related.
よう思い出した。少し席を外すが後を頼む。
Alright, you guys keep at it. Time flew by. Before I knew it, the sky had changed color. The twilight was a vivid red, like the color of blood. It's a little ominous, don't you think? I walked through the dorm's front entrance and entered the living room. There was no need to even go to the room I planned to visit. Oh, Saku, are you okay? You look like you're slowly going crazy. Like I said, yandere. Saku was right there. She seemed to have been looking outside through the wall window, made of a special material. She knew that I had returned. The message that someone had come was displayed on the info layer the moment I passed the entrance. She didn't face me, but her voice sounded the same as ever. However, it had a somewhat mechanical creak to it as well. It literally looks like she's about to kill me. She slowly turned towards me. There was nothing strange in that moment at how she generally acted, but it felt somewhat warped, as though her joints were akin to a broken doll's.
忘れ物があったのでね。
忘れ物?
Please don't stab me. Please. The twilight rays flowing in painted the living room, making it look like a sea of blood. Saku flicked her hair back, looking utterly bored. Her flower-like beauty appeared flawless. The crimson light on her face made her look like a rose blooming with Amira blood.
疲れているところを申し訳ないが、少し私の話を聞いてくれるかね。
らしくないのね。普段は嫌だって言っても話をするような人なのに。もしかしてそれが忘れ物？
遠回しなやりとりは好まないので、率直に尋ねよう。今朝告知された事件のことだ。
鍵石義雄が死んだ？
殺された。
ああ、そうね。殺された。
He spoke my correction back to me as though annoyed.
昨日の夜、どこにいたのかね。
どうして私が学生の一人を殺す必要があるの？
Wait. What are you trying to imply here? Hold up, what is going on? Did she actually kill someone? It just looks like she did. She skipped part of the exchange and responded to my question with a question. I couldn't help but notice that she seemed utterly unaffected by the exchange. It was most bizarre.
私こそと筆頭である君は同胞の死にどうしてそれほど平静でいられるのか
と。ノーブルたるもの、いかなる時も心乱す流れ。そうでしょ。筆頭としては悲しみには耐えてみせないとね。
Yeah, but if we remember earlier in the game, I'm pretty sure she said that it was rude to answer a question with a question, or that was us. Somebody did it. So you're not acting very noble right now. I'm very suspicious of what's going on, Saku. Are you bad, or is something going on? Is there a secret?
正論だな。君らしくはない。君の本質は率直な人間だった。誰よりも強いが、強さを最初から備えていたわけではない。 王たる者が生まれつき額に星を抱いて生まれ落ちるのとは逆にね。
あなたが私の何を知っているの？成田真理。ほんの数ヶ月の付き合いで何を分かったと思い込んでたの？
I mean, I feel like after a few months, you'll have a pretty good understanding of somebody, unless they're really fake and you not showing their real true personality.
知っていると思っていただけじゃないの？
人は正しく分かり合うことなど到底できない生き物だよ。
This was a really big plot twist because it's like she always seemed like a person who was very like strict to the rules, but it's nice to see like that different side, right?
ああ、そうね。分かり合えない。
Saku could have provided a proper excuse. It would have been simple for her to give a decent reason. However, she didn't, despite my best hopes.
もっと早く君と話すべきだった。そうすれば無駄な死は避けられた。
I actually felt regret. Shinri Narita saw it as a useless, meaningless emotion, yet I couldn't help but feel it. Yeah, wasn't he gonna talk to her like the next day? The reason for that was very selfish too. It wasn't actually about preventing someone's death, but preventing more bloodshed than necessary.
へえ。
She suddenly lowered her tone. As she'd clearly done it on purpose, Saku realized that she couldn't hide it anymore. Perhaps she simply thought it was too much trouble.
サク、
ここで使っていいの？
Well, she knows? She knows about his abilities? Okay. So I was right. Him doing that is him using his
確か
halo.
に現時点では状況証拠ばかりで決定的ではない。
Okay.
そして君はスクールの筆頭だ。ここでは確かによくはないな。
She purred as though licking her lips. In that moment, was I facing the real Saku at long last? What the heck? This is so good all of a sudden. What? I was just thinking, oh, this is just gonna be like a normal scene or whatever. And now they're giving us good stuff, huh? Had a violent will germinated within her? Was that all she had done for the academy? A brief act? That was a possibility. However, Shinri Narita had no means of seeing her past or reading her mind, so I had no way of truly knowing.
否定はしないのだな。
私は楽しんでやっているの。邪魔しないでくれる？
What the heck is going on? I'm so excited. Her eyes, reminiscent of the void of hell, warped in pleasure. I no longer felt any sense of doubt or condemnation.
私はしつこい方だ。もっと邪魔をしたらどうするかね。
I'm really confused though. Like I'm obviously missing something here. I'm really excited and I don't even know hardly what I'm excited about. But are they implying that she is the Incident 206 killer? Like I'm trying to understand here. That would be crazy. No words. She merely aimed a sharp glare at me. Her red lips, which resembled a fresh wound, formed in an amused smile. She opened it to expose teeth, which gleamed menacingly. She basically said, "I'd like to see you try."
承知した。
そう。じゃあ、もう休んでいい？
ああ、ゆっくりと休んでくれ。願わくば、君が良くなるよ。
おやすみ、成田。
I'm so lost. I'm trying to understand. With that, she returned to her room on the second floor while I left the dorm. Things had moved from bad to worse. I had no evidence, but the impression she gave off and my instincts told me I was right. Most importantly, Saku herself didn't seem to deny my theory. The only option I had left was to gather evidence. I should have expected that outcome. There were clues, and my senses warned me before I even found the first one. However, I still didn't want to believe Saku was the culprit.
今さらこの私が気が重いと感じることがあると。
I mean, I had kind of wondered if Saku had something to do with this. Like, it just seemed like they kind of brushed it off. Like, Saku was the one that was killing some of these HMIs, right? And Saku doesn't seem like the kind of person who would kill somebody. At least not the other, like, personality that we had seen of her up until this point. So, gosh, my mind's blown, okay? I had to tell Eru the truth. My legs felt as heavy as lead as I walked back to her. Still, I had to go. After all, I'd promised her that I would save Saku. Bruh, that was so intense. Like, what in the world? Okay, I am going to end the video here because I want to make sure I dedicate a whole nother episode to everything that's about to happen. Hopefully the next episode I'll cover the rest of this because I've been making longer episodes. But oh my gosh, that's a plot twist. I'm pretty sure that's what they're implying, right? Like she's the Incident 206 killer. Like she's the one that's been like killing all these HMIs and stuff. Gosh. Okay. I want to know everything that led up to that point. I need more information about that. That's okay. And then we're going into her route next. Like, what is going on in the story right now? This is supposed to be about Eru, and this is way more about Saku now than it ever was Eru. Like, I mean, we've gotten a lot of cool information about Eru, but this is kind of crazy. I mean, gosh, my mind, I'm just blown. Anyways, guys, I mean that was exciting. I feel like this route's been like very slow, and I said that in the last episode too. But it's been kind of slow at times. But like they keep giving us this little bits of information, and then they drop big things like that. Like that gets me excited for the game. It really does. But anyways, guys, I hope you're enjoying it. I'm going to try to finish her route in the next episode. No guarantees, but I'm thinking I will. So hopefully that'll be fun. Anyways, guys, hope you've been enjoying it, and I'll see you in the next one.